riding his fourth Tour de France. In his first Tour de France, he in fact wore the yellow jersey and was one of the rare riders who in fact abandoned while wearing the yellow jersey, unable to continue on the road up to the Lac de Madine. He had very difficult problems with his knee and he had to pull over to the side of the road. A sad day for him, but he's come back to the Tour de France. But the man in front, Thierry Bourguignon, is a very frequent rider of the Tour de France. In fact, he's ridden the Tour. This is his 7th participation at the Tour, and he's always finished between 25th and 30th. Roland Meyer getting down to a very good rhythm now, picking up the pace. He's fairly certain that there won't be any reaction in the main field from the US Postal Service team to try and pull him back, because he's no danger at all to Lance Armstrong's place at the top, wearing the yellow jersey very comfortably now. That was an incredible performance by Armstrong yesterday, and a lot of the climbers who thought he might be weak in the mountains, they soon got a pretty good answer.
And did they just? Well, Richard Virenque is riding alongside Lance Armstrong back in the main field now, having had a little spell out the back of the field with his puncture. A couple of teammates stopped and brought him back in. Sorry about a little bit of picture breakup we're experiencing here out in the woods on the lower slopes of the Croix de la Fer, as Meyer, I saw him pull up to quite a high gear there, because it's not all uphill at the moment, and he's gone into his top gear and he's trying to get away from that peloton and settle into his own rhythm, and he might well latch on with the two leaders.
Taking a few risks down that corner there to try and open up his advantage before the road kicks up again. This is a very difficult climb, the Col de Croix de Fer. Goes up to 2,067 meters, and it's quite cool at the top. Not as cool as it was at the top of the Mont Cenis. It's currently 12 degrees Celsius at the top of the climb, and Roland Meyer is hoping that on this little descent in the middle part of the climb he can open up a bit more of a gap. But you can see the main field now starting to stretch out. All of that is because of the work being done at the front of the main field by the US Postal Service team of Lance Armstrong.
Well, Pascal Derame, who is on the US Postal team, it was his job to make the early pace, which he did, and he's paid the price already on this climb, because he has been dropped in what is quite a large group of riders. They may well start to trickle back onto the back of this big field during this little respite. There's a couple of these short downhill stretches before it really bites into the legs, and they well could get back.
If you're in a back group like that in the mountains, the autobus as they call it, you really do have to go down the hills as fast as possible, take a lot of risks, because that is the only point on the course where you're not losing any time, and if possible you are pulling back time on the riders at the front of the race. It's on the big mountain slopes that you have to try and get together and ride at a comfortable place to make sure you can keep a big group all riding together. And the idea of that is then that when you are on parts of the course where it's easy to organize the chase, you can pick up the pace and limit your losses.
And there's a nice picture of the Tour de France. And by the way, many of you wonder exactly where the Alpe d'Huez is, although many of you certainly found it over the years. The easiest way to get to it, if by aeroplane, you fly to Grenoble and then you get a hire car and you drive on the road to Briançon and make sure you turn up the sign that says to the Alpe d'Huez. Over the years, it has certainly increased in size with the number of chalets up here now. Very, very pretty place, especially in the summer. A tremendously popular spot in the winter, less so in the summer. It's a real nice place to come to. Sorry, Paul.
Riders concerned about the elimination times in the Tour de France. It varies very much depending on the average speed of each stage, and what then happens is a percentage of the overall winner's time is applied to his time, and that gives you the elimination time, which is very important for a lot of riders in the Tour today. And the way you do that is by taking the percentage, adding it to the time that the winner had when he crossed the line, and that's just the amount of time that you need to cover the course and get inside and remain in the Tour de France.
It was a little over an hour you were allowed yesterday, based on the average speed of the stage, and Jay Sweet just about made it, because he came in yesterday 56 minutes and 59 seconds behind the winner. If it had been just over the hour, he would have been eliminated. And the Tour de France is very rough on the riders. They very rarely make an exception to that rule unless you have a real good excuse. Well, there you get some idea of the Croix de Fer, and we're going right up to the top here, and so it's an awful long way to climb, and at a tempo climb there's no real disadvantage to riders setting the pace on a mountain, because in fact to some degree it's to their advantage, because they are dictating the speed of the climb, and if you are under pressure in that big pack, then you just start to sag off the back of the race. And the two leaders, Paul, clearly riding now more slowly, I think, than the group being led by George Hincapie here. And Hincapie again will hold on to that front position as long as possible. He also is not a great climber, and I would think won't be amongst the leaders by the time we get to the top today.
Lance looking very comfortable getting out of the saddle there. On the elbow of Kevin Livingston, number 186, you could just see the bandage, a sequel from his crash yesterday on the descent of Mont Genève. And also Tyler Hamilton too, pretty well bandaged after a crash that he had as well on that stage yesterday. Many riders going out because of crashes, and one of them, probably the most famous abandon yesterday, was Mario Cipollini, who did in fact tell us that he wanted to finish at the Alpe d'Huez because it's the only major climb of the Tour de France that he hasn't been at. Well, the only way he's going to experience it today is on the telly.
Exactly right. But I'll tell you what, the pacemaking here by Hincapie is now ejected from the back seat of the bunch. Laurent Brochard, he's gone now, and another 4 riders, including Benoit Salmon, he's also been dropped at the back of the field.
And news coming to us over race radio. In fact, Frankie Andrea has gone straight out of the back of this group of the yellow jersey, and with him a rider, surprising that he's not riding closer to the front in the mountains, is Jens Voigt. He too was looking very good and fresh at the start of this Tour de France, but the pace that's being set at the moment by George Hincapie is blistering.
Jens, the leader for a single day in the King of the Mountains jersey last year, and Jens 24th overall today at the start, 18 minutes off the lead. Little bit surprisingly dropped now on the lower slopes of this climb. So these two riders just getting on with the job in hand with no further time checks on. The last one we got some time ago was 11 minutes and 20 seconds, and it's come down, as far as we can work out, about a minute now over the lone chasing rider Meyer, who has 35 seconds over the peloton being led there by George Hincapie.
These two riders, all they've got to do now is stay together and ride at a sensible pace so that they can actually work once they get over the top of this mountain. They know that the group behind will accelerate as they approach the summit of the Croix de Fer, and they will lose an awful lot of time. What they are hoping at the moment is that they can go over the top of the climb with an advantage still of 3 or 4 minutes, and then again they can build that up along the valley roads leading to Bourg d'Oisans and give them a chance of surviving to the top of the Alpe d'Huez.
It's a pity we can't see back to that big bunch right now from the helicopter, because what we're hearing on race radio is an awful lot of riders slipping out the back of it, and it's thinning down quite rapidly. So clearly, Paul, there are a lot of tired men in the Tour this year, and it does seem to be settling down to be between about 7 or 8 the same names every day.
Well, the big boys are all on form. There you can see moving up towards the front of the pack. The second white jersey there, just over to the left-hand side, is Alex Zuller. Abraham Alano is very close to the front, as is Stefano Garzelli, the Italian, the leader this year of the Mercatone Uno squad, the squad which is that of Marco Pantani, not riding the Tour de France this year. And I think Stefano Garzelli is a kind of rider who today could put in a very good performance on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez.
But looking down now, we might get a chance to see the tail of the peloton from the helicopter camera, because this field is thinning out rapidly. 165 riders left the start this morning, and already we've been advised of a number of riders who have retired and a number of riders who are now in desperate trouble, and they've still got to climb the Alp as well.
Hincapie doing a phenomenal job, because he too is a very big rider to drag his body up these mountain passes, and he at the moment is just doing as much as he can to keep the pace high. And to see George Hincapie at the front in the mountains and all of the riders going out to the back just goes to show what kind of a performance he is putting in today. And what happens in a team when you do get a yellow jersey really is impressive. In fact, information again coming through, another important rider being dropped from this group of Lance Armstrong is Christophe Moreau, the man who was lying, in fact, in 3rd place in the overall standings, and he was hoping to survive throughout these mountains, but he too now in difficulty.
Well, that is quite surprising. He had a very good day for him yesterday, Christophe Moreau, because he finished 20th and in the same group, just behind, in fact, Abraham Olano. So it's 9:16, the gap now back to Meyer, slightly more back to the main field. They're slowly winding in those two leaders, but Christophe Moreau then slipping away here, and that will mean that Alex Zuller could at least find himself up to 3rd place overall tonight. And when it all seemed hopeless for him just a couple of days into the Tour, he's now about to move into a podium place in Paris.
Alex Zuller didn't give up. He lost 6 minutes on that crash when the riders went over the Passage au Gois, but he never gave up. He chased and encouraged his team to chase all the way to the finish line, but when the clock stopped, he'd lost more than 6 minutes. But he didn't give up. He went back into the frame of a man trying to ride the overall standings at the Tour de France, and he came up and put a great performance in, finishing second to Lance in the time trial and then second again yesterday, and that's how he managed to jump up the overall standings so highly, and that's what he's looking for now, a place on the podium in Paris, and he will be looking for an attack later on in the day. But you can see a lot of riders moving forward now. Ivan Gotti, the Polti rider, the teammate of Richard Virenque, he too is moving to the front, and all this is a psychological battle to try and put pressure on Armstrong, because these riders, despite his performance yesterday, still are not sure whether or not he is a great climber.
No, that's right, and day 2 in the mountains can be so different to day 1 when it looks apparent that one rider like Armstrong is so much stronger than the others. It's surprising what the difference a day makes, and riders' body just changes. And Gotti yesterday I thought was superb. It appeared he'd done just enough to win. He took a lot of risks on the descent of the Col de Montgenèvre when it was so slippery, but he got the gap, and Escartine went to him, but Armstrong just cooled them all down. Well, the field, as you can see in the Tour de France today, is down to about 40 riders now left. We're still on the lower slopes of the Col de la Croix de Fer, and it's just on a 10-minute lead to the 2 men setting the pace, Stéphane Heulot and Thierry Bourguignon, with Roland Meyer just in between.
Welcome back. In recent years, we've seen the advent of the hard shell helmet. Now, you know, cycling is a very fast and dangerous sport, and the onus really is on safety. The people who designed these helmets have done everything to make them as light and as comfortable to wear as possible. But in the Tour de France, on the big hot days, you'll notice a lot of riders don't wear them. It is not obligatory at the Tour de France. But one thing that you will notice, when the race does start to get dangerous, there are more and more riders going back for their helmets.
And most of the riders today, Paul, choosing to leave those helmets off, except the rider in the lead right now has just put his on. And we're beginning to get a little bit lively in the bunch now. We've been climbing for the best part of 27 kilometers on the Col de la Croix de Fer right now. Carlos Contreras of Kelme is the rider setting the pace now. In the last few moments, the US postal riders have been blown off the front of this race, and the other riders starting to take over. Still those same 2 riders out in front, Stéphane Heulot and Thierry Bourguignon. The last time check we got 6 minutes 35 on the one chasing rider, Roland Meyer, and 7 minutes 15 on this bunch here. Now there's only about 38 riders left in the bunch as well.
A great job again done by US Postal, but obviously the attacks had to come from these 2 teams, Team Banesto and Team Kelme. This is their terrain. This is where they really want to try and put Armstrong into difficulty, and that's why, as we come to the steepest part here of the Col de la Croix de Fer, these Spanish teams have come to the front to try and dislodge Armstrong.
Well, Contreras was the lead-out man, if you like, for Fernando Escartine yesterday on the road to Sestriere. Now he's trying to do it again here for him. That's Fernando Escartine is the number 2 rider in the green jersey here. And Armstrong, well placed, look at that, riding 6th wheel in the front here, keeping an eye on everyone. He's now down to only 1 teammate, and it looks like Tyler Hamilton.
That's surprising, because Kevin Livingston looked very comfortable, but once that acceleration came from the Kelme riders, he did slip back that group pretty rapidly. Moving up the outside there, the white jersey with the red stripe across it, that is the champion of Germany, Udo Bolz, and the polka dot jersey moving into a good position as well, Richard Virenque.
And just behind him, we've got Laurent Dufaux, changed his jerseys back to the correct colours today. Seiko saved themselves a few shillings because they got fined £2,000 yesterday for pulling on a different strip.
Well, that attack by the Kelme riders from Spain really came to nothing there. All it really did was reduce the number of teammates with Lance Armstrong. Now his number of teammates is down to 1, that is Tyler Hamilton. And Kevin Livingston, because of the fact that this group has slowed down somewhat, may have a chance to recuperate and get back up here. The attack now coming from Udo Bolz, but immediately the response coming from Tyler Hamilton.
Yes, Hamilton digging deep there to grab hold of the back wheel of Udo Bolz, who is a very good climber, by the way, on the Telecom team. So often overshadowed by the fine climbing of Bjorn Ries and Jan Ulrich in the tours gone by. But this man, in the absence of those 2, is probably the best climber on the team.
Tyler Hamilton now assuming the role of the first man at this group. He's just going to set a tempo now to try and discourage some of the other climbers from attacking. But as we get further up this slope, again, I'm sure there will be attacks coming from the Kelme team from Spain, the green and white jerseys. And of course, obviously, again, Banesta will have to try and do something to move themselves further up the overall rankings, and if they can, put Lance Armstrong into difficulty. Yesterday, although it was a very hard day in the mountains, the weather conditions were very much in the favor of Armstrong. And again, Contreras comes to the front, accelerates to try and blow this group apart.
Well, what they're doing is coming up on Roland Meyer, who is now only 30 seconds ahead of this group. And once they wipe him out, they're just 6 minutes behind the two leaders, who might well survive to the top, but not much further than that. Well, the day has gone pretty easy so far for the leaders of this tour. Now I think it's about to get pretty hard. And as the riders behind are losing time, and we'll have to watch out for that clock at the summit today at Alpe d'Huez, Lance Armstrong now is going to have to be very, very vigilant and watch who makes the attacks.
These constant accelerations will be difficult for Armstrong, because he does prefer to ride at a steady pace over the first part of this climb, although yesterday he did accelerate magnificently over the last few kilometers to get across to that leading group of two. But that's what the riders from the Spanish teams are trying to do at the moment. They're trying to accelerate and slow down and accelerate, and see if that is a tactic to try and dislodge Armstrong, to see if he is able to respond to their consistent changes of rhythm.
Well, there's Roland Meyer, and our helicopter pulling back its camera, and we should see 30 seconds down the road now what is left of the main peloton today. It's a small group indeed, been chiseled down to around about 35 riders here. Udo Bolt's in dead center of our picture. To the right we've got Richard Virenque and Contreras, and tucked in now behind is Tyler Hamilton and the yellow jersey of Lance Armstrong, and over to our left there the red jersey of Laurent Dufaux. That was the man, Laurent Dufaux, who Armstrong feared yesterday, and yet he blew big time in the last 10 kilometers and came in even behind Abraham Olano.
He's riding today in the red jersey of Seiko Cannondale after that big fine yesterday, when the whole team turned out in the golden strip of Julius Caesar to celebrate the 2099 birthday of Caesar. I'm not quite sure that it was a worthwhile operation, but certainly the team got a lot of publicity out of it.
Indeed they did. Now the tempo clearly has been lifted now. We're about 5, maybe 6 kilometers from the summit of the Col de la Croix de Fer. A small select group. No attacks coming from Armstrong now. It's all down to them to attack him. He's gained all the time he requires now in this year's Tour de France. They have got to work out how they get back the time they have lost. The nearest to Armstrong is Abraham Olano, 6 minutes and 3 seconds down. Christophe Moreau was 7:44 down in third. That's gone for him now, because he's been dropped on this climb and is some minutes behind this group.
There are a lot of Once riders in this group as well. In the middle there, the black and yellow jersey on the shoulders of Abraham Olano, the man wearing number 51. He will be a lot more comfortable on this terrain today. A lot of the climbers will be happy with the fact that the weather has changed. It isn't raining, because that does have a serious effect on these climbers' muscles. Many climbers have a very low body fat of between 4 and 5%, so when it does get cold, that really affects the muscles.
Dufaux looking over to his right there, checking down lower down to see if anybody was coming up. Way down the slope. There's the slopes of the Croix de Fer at the back of the riders, going right up this mountain, and this is where it's going to get pretty tough now. And once the Colombians and the Spanish riders see the increase in the gradient, they'll accelerate out of this pack and see who can follow. That's bound to happen as they come up towards the top of the Col de la Croix de Fer. Once over the top of this mountain, a long descent will take us right back down to Bourg d'Oisans. And it's in Bourg d'Oisans where there'll be a huge crowd waiting to cheer the riders onto the first slopes of Alpe d'Huez itself.
Chance to see just how difficult some of these alpine passes are. The difficult thing for a lot of riders, especially the riders at the back of the field, is they can look up these zigzag climbs and they can see just how far behind they are, and it really is discouraging when you look right up to the top of the mountain. You can hear the crowd actually applauding the lead group, and you realize it's going to take you more than another 20 minutes to get up there.
It must be a horrible feeling. Richard Virenque looking up to his right to see where the road's going next. As he continues to keep quite a cool tempo here. He's looking very good on the mountains today, as he was yesterday. Udo Bolt's a much bigger man and more laboured on the climb on the left of our picture there. Dufaux sitting in, waiting. No rider can afford to wait too long in this year's Tour de France now. They've got to try and attack early on and open up the time gaps on Armstrong.
Armstrong riding a fair way back in the bunch now, around about 10th position for him. He's looking around to see where Tyler Hamilton is, and Hamilton is right on his wheel, but he is now down to just one last remaining teammate, because we have confirmation that Kevin Livingston has been dropped from this group, even though it has slowed down a little bit over the last few kilometers.
Yes, Hincapie did a fine piece of pacemaking up here, as you may have saw, but he's gone also now. He's dropped back as well, as these are now the strong men of the 1999 Tour de France, as they continue to watch each other and wait for their opportunity to sprint away from the field. Contreras over to the right of our picture there. We did have an attack earlier by Stefano Gazzelli. He got about 30 seconds and no more, because he's reasonably high placed overall in 15th position. So they did bring him back, and he's back in the pack now.
Well, Kelme did attempt to put in a couple of accelerations there 3 or 4 times, but it did nothing to disturb Lance Armstrong, who responded to them at every occasion. These two riders at the front are really having a hard time. They started at the bottom of this climb with a time advantage of 11 minutes and 20 seconds. And the last time gap we've been given by race radios, in fact, their advantage now is down to 6 minutes and 30 seconds. They're riding at a very sensible pace, riding within each other, just trying to make sure that they can conserve as much of their advantage to the summit of this climb as possible. And they're now reaching a very difficult part. This part at the top of the Col de la Croix de Fer is when you get into the rocks, and it really gets hot on a day like this, because a lot of heat gets reflected off the rocks at the side of the road.
Well, these two riders who broke away after some 77 kilometers today on the descent from the previous big mountain of Mont Cenis are now going to share out the prize money at the top of the climb of the Col de la Croix de Fer. Stéphane Heulot in the front and Thierry Bourguignon. He didn't ride the Tour de France in 1994 and 1995, Bourguignon, and in fact he was the best time recorded amongst the touring cyclists who rode the Étape du Tour, which is a complete copy of one of the stages of the Tour in 95. That was when he was sidelined, but he's back now and he's had some good rides in the Tour de France.
He is, in fact, the oldest rider in the Tour de France as well this year, 36.5 years old. As they reach the summit, it's a very cool climate up here. It's going to be maximum points over the top for Stéphane Heulot. They haven't even sprinted it out.
No, well, they won't feature in the King of the Mountains in the long term, but today they're having their big moment as Bourguignon now starts the descent, and they zip up their jerseys for the long way down to the bottom. It is a long descent too, all the way from the top, where they're now at 2,067 meters. At kilometer 165. They will now go downhill till kilometer 204, and that's when they start climbing Alpe d'Huez. Now Richard Virenque will want the points here. He's going to be challenged by a few of the sprinters. Contreras over to the left there, Dufaux in the red to the right, Armstrong sitting comfortably in the middle. He's not interested in the King of the Mountains competition. Lance Armstrong has only got one thing on his mind, and that's to win the Tour de France.
Virenque looking very comfortable in the middle, moving up on the outside. A lot of the Spanish riders now moving to the front, because they certainly realize they want to start this descent in the first 4 or 5 places, because this is also a possibility where a man like Richard Virenque could launch an attack, as he did on yesterday's stage. As soon as he went for the King of the Mountains points over the top, he actually insisted on the descent of the Col de la Guillibier, and 1 or 2 riders were left behind because they weren't able to pick up the pace quite so quickly.
Virenque just checking over to see if any of the riders who might challenge him are beginning to move forward. And it's interesting to see that this rider so often seems to frighten off the opposition. When he's won the title 4 times, he always used to nip away from the pack and pinch the points at the top. And he's never really been challenged, has he, in any of his 4 titles he's won, Paul?
As once he's got that jersey on his shoulders, he really has got the psychological advantage over everybody else. And today he's done a similar job. He got 2nd place over the top at the first climb of the day, and today he'll be looking to try and get 4th, because there are already 3 riders up the road. But none of the other riders in this group, apart from Lance Armstrong, are really able to challenge him in that competition. And for Lance Armstrong, the King of the Mountains is obviously not his major objective.
Well, Alex Zula has forced his way to the front now. This rider who has tried desperately to penetrate the armour of Lance Armstrong, so far without success. But he does seem to be riding very, very well, even so.
Alex Zula ridden very well. That 2nd place in the prologue confirmed that he had returned to his former condition, and then 2nd place to Lance Armstrong in the big long time trial at Metz also confirmed that as well. The main group of the yellow jersey now, coming past the banner that shows them they have 1,000 meters left to go to the summit. And in fact, they're closing down a lot of the time on the two leaders. The man in the middle, Roland Mayer, was 5 minutes 55 seconds behind the two leaders, and the main field now just 6.5 minutes behind.
And Virenque leaving it as late as he can before he sprints for the summit of the climb here. I don't think Zuller will take him on, but Garzelli might have a little dig. The Garzelli's up there as well. A couple of the Once boys looking for the whereabouts of Abraham Olano. But already this competition going very nicely the way of Richard Virenque.
Very big group coming to the summit of the Col de la Croix de Fer. Not a real fight has happened so far. Obviously, many of the climbers tired after yesterday's race. They tried to put Armstrong into difficulty. They put down their best shots. In fact, they ended up being fairly tired at the end of the day. Incredible time gaps produced on the climb up to Sestriere. Armstrong now moving up the outside. You see, he wants to stay as close to the front as possible, but not ride in the wind.
Well, he's just interested in keeping his eye on everybody here. I think he'll feel that nobody will make a move till the slopes of Alpe d'Huez. They've gone over these two huge mountains today, and they've hardly turned a pedal in anger. They've lifted the pace up nicely and rid themselves of the non-climbers, but really that's all they've done. They've allowed those two riders to stay out in front, and it could well be that Bourguignon and Heulot will survive the long downhill now, all the way to Bourg-Boison, and could be the first onto the lower slopes of the Alpe. But I'm quite sure they won't be there when we get to the top, because I think Virenque on Bastille Day is going to be a tough man to beat.
He's certainly looking for that, and the crowds out there on the road really do want him to win the stage here at the Alpe d'Huez. This is the second man on the road, Roland Mayer, coming up to the summit now for him of the Col de la Croix de Fer. 5 minutes and 55 seconds it is since, in fact, the two leaders went over the top, and they should conserve their advantage down through the valley to the Bourg-Boison. But once they reach the foot of the Alpe d'Huez, then in the main field behind, big serious attacks are going to happen.
And the publicity caravan already passed through here well over an hour ago, having handed out those green hands. And the green jersey, by the way, on the shoulders of Stuart O'Grady today, but he's already off the back. As far as we know, he's caught up with the autobus of riders, just trying to get inside the time limit today for him. But now Mayer is over the top. Well, not quite, but he will be in a second. There's the clock counting. And so it's just about 5 minutes, 4:57 behind the two leaders now.
He's doing a good ride. He's slowly eating into the advantage of those two leaders, because the last time check we had was 5:55, so he's taken more than a minute off the advantage that those two leaders have. Virenque at the front in second position. Andrea Piron, who switched across this year to ride for the Once squad, and he's having a great Tour de France.
Yes, he is, and he's a bit handicapped because he's got to help Abraham Olano here. But there they come. Typical crowd this on the Croix de Fer, because they don't go too far down. They like to get back in the cars as soon as the riders have gone through. It's a very difficult col to park your car on. It's so narrow, and so everybody has to wait at the top of the climb. And here comes Virenque now, holding nicely first position, and the crowd are on his side here because Piron is second, and then Alex Zuller is third. Armstrong just watching and waiting and not really too interested in the fight which is going on at the front here for the points.
This is a huge group of riders, considering we've been over two massive mountains so far. Now's the acceleration coming for Virenque. In second place, Andrea Piron will try and combine, but Virenque knows how to win these mountain tops.
Yes, Piron is digging in there deeply. Zuller's let the gap open. Now Armstrong's not too worried on Zuller's wheel, and it goes Virenque, Piron, Zuller and Armstrong in that order at around about 6:12.
Armstrong looking very comfortable, making sure that he zipped his jersey up over the top there, and you can see now this is the descent of the Col de la Croix de Fer. They drop down off this mountain very rapidly into the valley below, but there's one little surprise, because the two riders in front have found it already. Halfway down the descent, there's a little climb, and you start to get cold muscles, then all of a sudden you've got to dig deep again and try and find a big rhythm.
Thierry Bourguignon, who's a man of the Alps, by the way, and also Stéphane Heulot. They went officially now 4:57 over Roland Mayer and 6 minutes 11 seconds over the peloton. There's the point score. No major points there for Richard Virenque, but he was best of the rest. So he is building an interesting lead now in that King of the Mountains, which loses a little bit of impetus tomorrow as we move off towards Saint-Étienne. But it's not totally flat down there, Paul, is it? There's some nice hills around the back of that city.
There certainly are. It really is regarded as the capital of the Alps. That's Pascal Dubois coming alongside, the second team manager of the Big Mat team, and he's giving some advantage, some information to Thierry Bourguignon, passing up a drink, which you're allowed to do on the descent of the climbs, you're never allowed to hand up a drink actually on the ascent of a mountain, but in fact this is going uphill, and he's taken advantage to come up alongside these two leaders and pass up some reinforcements for Thierry Bourguignon.
Well, officially we are over the top, even if we are going uphill, so he won't get a fine for that. Remember that Roland Meyer did well to hold off. In fact, he pulled away from that chase group in the last kilometre of the climb of the col there, because he was only 30 minutes up and he went through just over a minute ahead of the group. So it just shows you how that group is showing no real attraction in those two leaders. They are expecting them to come back almost of their own volition later.
They're not worried at all about them at the start of the day. In fact, Heulot was the best placed rider, 27th overall, 18 minutes and 57 seconds behind Lance Armstrong. But that's a great shot of an alpine descent, and that's the best part of cycling for me, being able to go down those mountains as fast as you like. And it really is a thrill to be able to touch speeds of 100 and 110 kilometers an hour. But if you do take risks at the back, you do get a chance of catching up, and one man catching up now is the French champion Francois Simon, and this looks very much like Kevin Livingston may well. In fact, it's not, it's Tyler Hamilton. I thought Livingston might have taken the risk and got himself back into the front group as well.
Further back in the group here, looks like Cedric Vasseur leading them up, and Commesso is there, the champion of Italy. This is over almost 9 minutes the time they go into the band. It would be over 9 minutes for this group now.
Cedric Vasseur, a former wearer of the yellow jersey, and in fact in that group we also have the brother of the man who's caught in the middle there, Armin Meijer, who rides for the Seiko team. There coming through as well was Michael Bogaard, the former champion of Holland, and the man who was hoping today to follow the great Dutch tradition of performing well on Alpe d'Huez, but with a 9 minutes deficit, he's not going to be too close on the Alpe.
Well, here's the way down for the two leaders now. They'll still try and work together if they can, as the speedometer will shoot up, and they'll start to descend at around about 80 kilometers an hour, faster if they can pedal that quickly, as they make their way down to Bourg d'Oisans now.
They'll use this part of the course now to recuperate. They will look at the lay of the land so that they can figure out just exactly how the corner is going to be. Let's not forget, these riders don't know what the descent's going to be like, Phil. They may have ridden them 12 months ago, so they never know exactly what the exit of the corner they're going into is going to look like.
Now, as you know, EPO is a bit of a taboo term on this year's tour, standing as it does for erythropoietin, the blood-boosting drug. But up here on Alpe d'Huez, it's been reinvented as Eau Pastis and Orgeat, which is a sort of almond syrup. The mixture is free, it's acceptable, it's being handed out to the cyclists here, but I have to say, it's pretty horrible to taste.
Yes, Gary, but I'm also told it's great for a hangover as well. Right, we're back to the Tour de France now, and we are approaching Bourg d'Oisans. As everybody knows, that is the last town you see before the slopes of Alpe d'Huez. Those two riders are still away, but the Banesto team now, Paul, has whipped up the chase here. There's the time gaps for you. 3:55 on Roland Meyer. He's still stuck in no man's land. And the Armstrong group here, 5 minutes, 10 seconds.
Lance Armstrong getting reinforcements for the chase at the front now, because obviously the teams of the big climbers of the Tour de France don't want to get robbed of a chance of winning at Alpe d'Huez. The two riders we're looking at now, Stéphane Heulot and Thierry Bourguignon, will very shortly be turning onto the first straight of the Alpe d'Huez, and their advantage is still a very large one at 5 minutes and 10 seconds.
We're looking here at the two leaders then. They will flick left. It's a marvellous crowd in Bourg d'Oisans. There's even more on the mountains as well. And Thierry Bourguignon and Stéphane Heulot have been away now since kilometre 67, and there's just on 20 kilometres left to go.
It's Bastille Day, and the French are waving their flag at the front of the race. But behind, the pace has really picked up in the main field, with Banesto and the Kelme team coming to the front to try and whip up the pace before we get to the foot of the Alpe d'Huez, because they feel today that Alex Zuller from Banesto and Fernando Escartin are the two riders who've got a great chance of winning at the top of the Alpe.
Now, once they do get to the climb, and these two riders will be free as a bird for the time being, but this field here is going to split up under pressure immediately. They're approaching the town of Bourg d'Oisans now. They're a couple of kilometres behind those two leaders. We think that Christophe Moreau may have got back into this group, but the organisation hasn't made any comment. but Paul thinks he's spotted him there. If he has, he's done a pretty good ride because he was dropped on the Col de la Croix de Fer.
And if he has got back on, he's taken some serious risks on the descent. But when you are high up in the overall rankings and you want to stay there, you do have to take some pretty good risks on the descents of some of these mountains. These are the teams of the two best climbers of yesterday who managed to rival Lance Armstrong to the very last minute. The green and white of the Kelme and the white and blue jersey of Team Banesto. Armstrong very happy to get reinforcements because his team have been chasing or riding at the front of the race for the whole day.
The only man he's got left in this group is Tyler Hamilton. Cesar Salone of the Banesto team is setting the pace. The two leaders are now on the Alp itself, so they're not very far from the finish, but unfortunately it is now all uphill and they can't relax because the crowd will cheer them all of the way to the summit. And thankfully, after yesterday's torrential rain, they should be in sunshine all the way to the top here. Stéphane Heulot knows all about Alpe d'Huez, so too does Thierry Bourguignon. They've been up it before. Now, what will they be thinking, Paul? They won't believe they can stay away, surely.
They're just thinking about survival, just hoping that they've got enough time to just keep going to the summit. And now is when the pressure will come on. These two guys have been riding at the front of the race, sharing the pacemaking all of the time. And Thierry Bourguignon looks in a lot more difficulty than Stéphane Heulot.
But he has on every climb, actually. He's never really enjoyed his climbs today. And in fact, I think he's already said goodbye to Stéphane Heulot here. The gap has already begun to open. Heulot is making his dash for freedom. And can he make it to the summit? It will be a big turn up, you know. Only one Frenchman's ever won up there, and that was Bernard Hinault.
Stéphane Heulot now has to ride a solo all the way to the finish if he wants to hold off the main field. His advantage at the bottom of the climb is 5 minutes and 10 seconds over the yellow jersey group of Lance Armstrong. But in the middle, trying to catch, and in fact he's been trying to catch since the Col de la Croix de Fer, is Roland Meyer. He's 3 minutes 55 seconds behind, and he's always been improving on that. He's always been pulling himself closer to the leading two riders.
Well, this is very steep, the Alpe d'Huez, in these first 3 or 4 kilometres. The switchbacks come about every 200 metres. We've switched back now to 1 kilometre to go for the sprint down in Bourg d'Oisans, but it doesn't really matter. These riders now are chasing down the two leaders. Roland Meyer got the 3rd prize through here, so there's nothing for the bunch. And the Banesto boys, and it's still Cesar Salon setting the pace here with, I think it is the two Kelme riders there behind.
Contreras in 2nd position. The other Banesto rider who's been very active at the front of the group is Mancebo. They're obviously keeping the pace extremely high, trying to make sure that they can get to the foot of the Alpe d'Huez with not too much of a deficit on the two leaders, which have now in fact been reduced to the one man at the front, which is Stéphane Heulot. Around the corner there, the pace very high, a big long line. Alex Zülle queuing up behind Lance Armstrong. Right on Lance Armstrong's wheel in the black and yellow was in fact Abraham Olano.
There's no doubt now that, in my opinion, Zülle is going to attack maybe as soon as this slope starts here. That's why he's got his team to whip up the pace. We've gone back to the leader, Stéphane Heulot. He's on his own now as he starts the switchbacks, and as he climbs up, it tells you exactly the number of meters you have climbed. The corners are all numbered and they count down to the finish. And when he looks over to his right here, in a matter of climbing just for a kilometre, the little town of Bourg d'Oisans, well, it looks so small because you do get to height so quickly. Just 13.5 kilometres to go. Under normal circumstances, Paul, he'd have won this stage.
This is not normal circumstances, though. This is a very difficult climb. The holder of the record for the speed going up here, in fact, is Marco Pantani. When he won at the Alpe d'Huez in 1997, it took him 37 minutes and 35 seconds to ride up this mountain. And if Stéphane Heulot could ride up it in just 40 minutes, he would have a pretty good chance of winning. But that is going to be a hard feat to ask him to do, considering the fact that he's been at the front of the race for so long.
That's right. He went clear with Bourguignon on the descent of the first big col today, 77 kilometres covered, and by the time he gets to the summit, it's 220 kilometres done, and it would have been a marvellous breakaway to be successful. That is unlikely, but even so, you've got to give it a go now. We're looking at a man who's worn the yellow jersey in the Tour de France and known the heartbreak of being forced to abandon while wearing that yellow jersey when he did so in tears. Now look at this now, as the Kelme boys assisted here by the white jerseys of Banesto. We've even got some of the Telecom riders on the left there trying to race up towards the start of the slope. We're not far away now from going onto the lower slopes of the Alpe d'Huez climb. And Lance Armstrong poised brilliantly, still using his teammate Tyler Hamilton to bring him to the slopes. Now the climb begins.
The climb begins now, and this is when you change from having used almost the biggest gear that you've got on your bicycle immediately to using one of the lowest. Acceleration now coming from Tyler Hamilton. Attacks immediately at the bottom of the climb coming from the Kelme riders, but Hamilton beautifully moving Armstrong up there into third position.
Well, there it is, Alpe d'Huez. The zigzags like a piece of string thrown across a mountain face all the way up to the top, as far as you can see. And these riders just jump on the slopes as if they have just 2 meters to go. They just go straight at it. So the leaders now have started the climb of Alpe d'Huez. They're already bringing back Roland Meyer here. He's been out in front and got absolutely nowhere. They've swept him up as soon as the climb has started, while this man has dropped Tilly Bourguignon. There he is in the distance. And Bourguignon, though, has seemed to recover.
Bourguignon didn't try to follow the acceleration of Stéphane Heulot at the bottom of the climb. He just knows that he has to ride at his own pace. Now, a normal rider who is not a great climber can lose up to 15 minutes on the climb of the Alpe d'Huez. And Stéphane Heulot not too excited by the support he's getting from these people here. It's a very dangerous thing that a lot of these supporters do. They run alongside, and I've seen them actually knock riders off on the slopes here of the Alpe d'Huez.
Well, really, you can see they like your support, but they don't like the proximity of you being so close to them. They're trying to concentrate now on what is one of the steepest climbs in the Tour de France, and the pressure is on them because the world is looking at them as well. And half of the world, I think, is on the slopes.
This is a very hard climb to get up. Armstrong moving up very comfortably into second position there. I have to take my hat off to the work done by Tyler Hamilton today, because he has consistently been at the front looking after Armstrong. Armstrong has all he's had to do today is ride in the shelter of his teammate. Richard Virenque sliding down the group a little bit. He should be a lot closer to the front if he's thinking of trying to get a victory for the French here on Bastille Day.
Well, Solon and Nessabo really did bring these leaders onto the slopes at very, very fast speed. You're right about Tyler Hamilton. He's come right to the front here, kept an eye on his team captain Lance Armstrong, and you know, surely we're not going to see these two ride away from the front of this group. But looking at some of the faces, Paul, there's a lot of riders suffering in this little league group.
Tyler Hamilton will be very happy that in fact Team Kelme and Banesto came up to the front on the flat section between the two climbs, because that gave him a little bit of rest to allow him to just recover just enough to look after Lance Armstrong on the early few kilometers of the Alpe d'Huez. Going out to the back though of the yellow jersey group is the champion of France. That is Francois Simon. And it looked very much as if Prudencio Indurain was pretty close there too.
He was just ahead of him, and Indurain, the name Indurain, usually at the front at this stage in the Tour de France between 93 and 98. And just look at this, you know when you arrive at Alpe d'Huez, because the crowds are dense and they're cheering everything they can. And this is what they've all been waiting for now, the leaders of the Tour de France, and they're putting the pressure on now, because this is the first attack which has gone from the 15 riders who are chasing the leader, and it's Manuel Beltran who's gone for Banesto. Now, is this the softener to prepare the way for Zuller?
This is what they have to do. They have to keep launching attacks on Lance Armstrong if they're going to put him into difficulty in the mountains. A lot of Banesto riders still in that group, and they're hoping that Tyler Hamilton, the last remaining teammate of Lance Armstrong, will crack, and that will have Armstrong on his own, and then the attacks will come from Escartine and from Zuller.
Well, we're looking down now at Beltran, still up the road, but his gap at the start of the climb was 5 minutes 10 seconds. It's now down to inside 3 minutes to Stéphane Heulot. But the gap is closing down, but he's hanging on. We're 9 kilometers from the finishing line as well. But Beltran now, he's the first man to go. Armstrong won't react on Beltran. He's not important in Armstrong's book.
Another attack coming off the front of the group now. All these men trying to attack Lance Armstrong. Another rider going across the green and white. That is a Kelme rider. So the teams of the Spanish climbers now trying to soften it up, trying to prepare the terrain for their men to try and have a go at Lance Armstrong.
Beltran lies 25th overall. It could well be Carlos Contreras, who's just gone there. He lies 26th. And the riders now trying to get control and to break the spirit of Armstrong. But we've had glimpses of him, and he looks so cool and easy. He's just sitting there at the moment, but he's going to have to make a decision too. This is Contreras, who has gone clear now. And the group here now also being joined by the Casino rider, and that is Benoit Salmon. And he has done a good ride today.
Contreras again attacking as he did yesterday. Benoit Salmon moving up into first place, but the way Contreras attacked, he opened up the gap very quickly, but then seemed to reach his maximum. In fact, Benoit Salmon has taken over, and he now is coming under the banner, which tells these riders they've got 10 kilometers left to go to the summit of the climb.
So it's about a kilometre further up the slope to the leader on the road today, Stéphane Heulot, who's done a marvellous ride. Thierry Bourguignon is still up there as well. Little acceleration by Salmon. I think we might well be moving up to Beltran now, because Beltran is the man who started the flurries of attacks. But Armstrong staying just nice and cool. He hasn't reacted to any of these attacks so far.
He doesn't have to respond to any of these attacks. These aren't the men who can really put him into danger, but this man is. Escartine has gone off the front, and you can see Tyler Hamilton digging now. He can't respond anymore. He's done so much work today, and Armstrong has left Escartine go clear.
Now, he's going to wait, I think, to see just whether Escartine is going to settle in and go for it, or whether indeed he will come back under his own volition. Escartine, Lance will see as a danger. He's 8th overall and 9 minutes behind him, and this is what his teammate was waiting for. Carlos Contreras has now got his team captain with him, and he's prepared to work.
That's exactly what they did yesterday, the 1-2. They sent out Contreras, and Escartine jumped across to him. Then Contreras waited for Escartine to come out of the yellow jersey group, and now the two riders will work together, and they're opening up a very quick advantage on Lance Armstrong. And I would have to say now that Tyler Hamilton must be pretty close to being finished.
Well, you are now watching two great climbers in action here. Just look at the way they are hammering the slopes. They immediately come up behind Salmon, and very shortly they'll be going round him too and sweeping up Beltran, who's just up the road too. These two riders have got what they wanted. It was a premeditated plan, wasn't it?
Certainly was, just the same as they did yesterday. They sent out two men to try and work together. Contreras now is being put into difficulty by his own teammate. There up the road you can see Beltran, the Banesto rider, and they've closed down the gap on him pretty rapidly. The lead at the moment is up the road for Stéphane Heulot. His advantage is 2 minutes and 20 seconds, so it's coming down pretty quick.
I would think it will plummet at the moment, because these two riders are working together. Beltran, you remember, he was riding well yesterday too. He cracked towards the end. He's a very talented young climber, is Manuel Beltran. Destined for great things, the big man Miguel Indurain once said. And now he's waiting for two other climbers to join him. Three climbers then have now rid themselves of the maillot jaune. Lance Armstrong. Armstrong, well, if he rides like he rode at Sestriere, he will wait Paul, and then he will try to bridge the gap.
He won't panic, he won't panic, he will just ride at his own pace. He was using Tyler Hamilton to the maximum, and then once it comes that Hamilton has got no more energy left, then Armstrong will take over and start to ride this climb at his own pace. And yesterday his own pace was too fast for everybody else in the race.
Well, the ungainly figure of Fernando Escartine on the right, who abandoned the Tour last year in protest when he was lying 4th overall because of all those invasions by police, etc. Now he's back to do a good ride. Here goes Pavel Tonkov digging deep too. The man that crashed yesterday on the descent of Mont Ginevra and is still smarting over that. He's now launched an attack. Armstrong is watching these riders hit him right, left and centre at the moment on the climb of Alpe d'Huez.
Tonkov going very clear there. Then now you can see the work has been done by Tyler Hamilton. He's swung off the front. He's done a great job. I don't really know where he got his energy from to just keep setting the pace on the Alpe d'Huez. But now Armstrong is alone. Now he will have to set the pace himself at the front of that group with all the other leaders there, like Alex Zuller.
Well, Tonkov was Mappe's ace card to win at the Tour de France this year. So far, things have not gone his way, and he is a massive 10.5 minutes behind Lance Armstrong. A couple of minutes back today on the Alpe, though, would do him in good stead, but it's not going to happen, Paul, because Armstrong himself has brought what's left of this group right up to Tonkov and to Salman, and sitting behind Lance is Alex Zuller, and he is yet to make his move.
Alex Zuller keeping a very close eye on Armstrong. He knows how strong this man is. He's finished second to him in both the time trials, and he was second to him at the Sestriere summit yesterday. But that was a great move by Armstrong. You see how intelligent he's riding. He's leaving his teammates to do all of the work until the last possible moment, and now it's up to him to set the pace.
And Armstrong looking around there, I think, to see probably where Tyler Hamilton was. You can see the difference in the speed now. We've gone up to the leader, Stéphane Heulot, who's responding as best he can to the cheers from the people on the barriers there. because he's a Frenchman riding out Bastille Day, don't forget, and Tonkov has gone again. He's waiting for Armstrong to join him, and he's kicked again, and this time Zuller is going across.
That's what Zuller was waiting for. He's waiting to see if Armstrong was able to respond. He's gone straight after Tonkov. Armstrong now accelerating in third position there. He knows that he has to try and stay with Alex Zuller, and the gap is there at the moment. Tonkov is riding very smoothly around that corner. Armstrong pulling himself there back to the wheel of Alex Zuller.
Well, these great bike riders now are prepared to rip each other apart on Alpe d'Huez today. It is a long time since we've seen riders in a group like this go one-on-one. Normally by now, especially the last two times, Pantani has been away on his own. But this time, there's a number of riders here still believe they can be first to the top, including Richard Virenque, who is now back in the picture.
Virenque is hanging there, just trying to survive, hoping that once Armstrong comes back to the wheel of Tonkov and Zuller, it will slow down and he can recover. You can see the damage that's been done there. A lot of riders being left behind, but the green and white jerseys are just in front. Fernando Escartin's attack once again is being nullified, this time by the acceleration of the Swiss rider Alex Zuller.
Well, there were 15 of them together when they came onto the Alpe today, just chasing those three riders up in front. They soon swept up Roland Meyer. We've still to see Thierry Bourguignon, who's up there somewhere, and the first man on the course is Stéphane Heulot. But it looks like that flurry of attacking by Tonkov and Zuller and the reaction by Armstrong has brought these three back to heel.
Well, this is Fernando Escartin. These riders at the moment 1 minute and 50 seconds behind the lone leader, Stéphane Heulot, former French champion, former yellow jersey holder at the Tour de France. Alex Zuller, Pavel Tonkov and Lance Armstrong riding themselves back up to that very strong attack by Fernando Escartin. And Virenque, for the moment, very happy to sit in the last place in the group.
Well, this rider now here being dropped from the group is Vinokurov. He is also struggling. He's having a better day than he had yesterday. As we go lower down the slope, this looks like Laurent Dufaux is also in trouble again.
Laurent Dufaux suffering on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez, but I tell you what, anybody would suffer because of the accelerations that have been going on this climb. It is very rare to see so many riders attack. But in the past, we've, as you've said, seen just one rider clearing off, and that's Marco Pantani. But today, everybody wants to try and attack.
Well, they're getting themselves back together. They shed a few of them, but this group now of very equally matched men have come back together to slug it out one-on-one. The American flag there flying for Lance Armstrong, and they gave a big cheer earlier today, by the way, when the only American to win the Tour de France yet is Greg LeMond. He came up on his bike as well. He won the Tour 3 times and tried to get a dead heat with Bernard Hinault back in '86, but the judges split them and gave it to the Frenchman. That's the only time the French have ever won up here.
It was a pretty close photo finish there as well, and I reckon the Blaireau Bernard Hinault just rolled his bike forward a little bit at the last minute because he knew which way the judges would make their decision.
And Bernard Hinault now part of the Tour de France organisation, and Greg LeMond waiting at the top to welcome Lance Armstrong as well. Remember that we've seen Lance Armstrong come back from the dreadful disease of cancer. We also remember Greg LeMond came back to win the Tour de France twice, having been shot in the back by mistake when he was out hunting with his brother-in-law. Now up to the leader, and he's still there and just ignoring what's going on behind him. He knows what will be going on behind him. He is just trying to concentrate, suffer and stay out there.
A very laboured style of Stéphane Heulot, just ticking out a rhythm, trying to make sure that he can hold on to at least some of the advantage he had at the bottom of this climb. But it's come down dramatically. He was 5 minutes and 10 seconds ahead of the yellow jersey group as they turned left at the bottom of this climb. And the last time check we had was 1 minute and 50 seconds on the group with Fernando Escartin, Zuller and Lance Armstrong.
Here's Thierry Bourguignon, still ahead of that rapidly closing select group of bike riders, as he just gets on with it. Look at this crowd here now on Alpe d'Huez, as big as ever. It used to be the domain of the Dutch, and they got 8 stage victories here with their riders, but they haven't got climbers anymore now, and so we're going to see, I think, a new name at the top of the list today, maybe a new country as well.
Thierry Bourguignon put a great attempt in today to try and wave the flag for France on Bastille Day, but he's now been caught, and all of the effort being done at the front here by this young man, Manuel Beltran. Many riders from Spain expect him to go on to greater things, but today he has to do the hard job of a domestique for Alex Zuller. He's setting the pace there, and you can see it's amazing the position of Escartin. He always looks as if he's on the point of cracking.
Well, we've got Tonkov there, number 31. When you see the one after a rider's number, as I've said before, it usually means that rider is the nominated team leader. And we expect to see a lot of those with one after the number on this climb today. 21 is Eric Zabel. You won't see him though, Paul, because he's a sprinter and he's a long way back right now.
Eric Zabel will be very happily in the autobus, probably 30 minutes behind the action that's happening here on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez at the moment. Armstrong again looking very cool as he did yesterday. He'll be savouring the sunshine because he revels in difficult conditions, and he reckoned yesterday that the advantage he had over the climbers was the fact that everybody had bad morale when they learned that the weather was going to be bad, and that gave him even stronger morale because he's always performed well in wet and difficult conditions.
Which is surprising, really, because he comes from Plano in Texas, and it's pretty hot down there. And today, well, he's going to feel a little bit at home. Around the village of Uez here, around the cemetery, which is a popular camping out point for many of the spectators for a couple of days before. The Danish seem to have claimed this spot these last few years, and it looks like they've done it again today. And they've had the pleasure of cheering Bjorn Ries up here as winner of the Tour de France as well.
Stéphane Heulot is having a very hard time up the road. The last time check is 1 minute and 10 seconds, so he's crumbling at the front, and I don't believe he can hold on because the speed of that group behind with Alex Zülle, Tonkov, Armstrong and Escartin is a lot faster. In fact, it's already lost another 9 seconds.
61 seconds from the rapidly closing group. They must be on the back wheel of Thierry Bourguignon right now as he starts the climb here, and you can see our cameraman trying desperately to give you an angle there to give you some idea just how steep Alpe d'Huez is. I know many of you will have climbed this on your bike. It is a viciously steep climb. Stephen Roach once told me, Paul, it is hard at the bottom and easy at the top. Well, I wouldn't agree with him.
It probably was easier for Stephen Roach because he was riding to try and win the Tour de France, but I always find it very difficult the whole way up this climb, but certainly it is a lot steeper at the bottom, and if you are a technical person when it comes to bicycles, most of these guys will use a 39-21 tooth sprocket at the bottom of the climb.
And work up as they go up, I suppose. But Beltran, the sweat running off his face there, trying to keep the pace high here, just in the hope that Armstrong might crack and Zülle might go forward, his teammate.
Zülle sitting comfortably in second position. He's allowing his teammate now to set all the pace making. Escartin there in the green and white has moved up into third place, and Armstrong riding in fourth. Tonkov now happy to sit on the wheel of Lance Armstrong, and Contreras dropping back a bit further.
Again, as we come towards the end of a stage, Armstrong alone now. His team once more have done a brilliant job for him. They've given everything to gain the second day in the Alps to keep Armstrong in a position without using any energy. Now their captain has to show what a great bike rider he is again today. Back up to the leader, those legs not turning round as fast, and I should imagine those beautiful muscles there are feeling a bit tired right now.
So difficult just to keep the legs rolling over. He's out of the saddle now. He really looks like a broken man. He's just hoping that he can hold on a little bit longer, but he knows what's happening behind. His team manager, Marc Madio, was up a few moments ago to let him know just exactly what's happening. And Race Radio now panicking, trying to clear the gap behind Stéphane Heulot because the group of the yellow jersey is right upon him.
It won't be easy because the crowd have reduced the road here to a little wider than Stéphane himself, and they want the cars behind out of the way now because of the approach of the rest of the race. Well, the rest of the race being about 7 riders, 2 from Banesto and 2 from Kelme. That gives them the options against Lance Armstrong from US Postal and Pavel Tonkov from Mapei.
The last few words from Marc Madio coming up alongside there. Keep going, son. It's very difficult, I know, but just keep rolling that gear over. But he's really just prolonging the agony because right behind there's a lot of speed in that group of Lance Armstrong. You can see the number there on the corner, number 6. When they reached the bottom of this climb, it indicated 21 corners to the summit. And he's not got very long to go, but I tell you what, there's a long way between the corners as you get further up the mountain.
Well, we're about to see them coming up on a slope lower down. It's still a good gap here. 6 more corners to go before we straighten out onto the top of the Alp, race across the town and up to the finishing line. And Stéphane Heulot, again, a rider showing us that he deserves to win today, but the Tour de France doesn't think like that. 5 kilometers to go for him now, and the pace behind is clearly quicker. And the only thing that can go in his favour, Paul, is that if Armstrong has cooled them all down, and for some reason they do slow.
Looking last time at Manuel Beltran, he wasn't looking like he wanted to slow down very much at all. He wants to try and get a victory today for the Banesto team, and he wants to try and get it for Alex Zülle. He won't slow down. He'll keep the pressure on over the next few kilometers because they know now that the end of the day is in sight for Stéphane Heulot. He's been at the front of this race for an awful long time, and it's just impossible to keep riding.
Well, Andy Hampson, the only American to win at Alpe d'Huez. Echavez, the only Spanish rider, now retired to win at Alpe d'Huez. And Paul Sherwin is telling us 32 seconds is the time gap as they go under the 5-kilometer banner, and the two Banesto boys setting the tempo.
Alex Zoller now will be thinking about the finish. He knows what it's like at the top of the Alpe d'Huez, and he will certainly want to try and outwit Lance Armstrong, but that will be difficult because Armstrong has a very strong finish, and if they don't get away from him, then the victory may well go to the American, making him the second American to win here.
Which would be unbelievable, Paul, wouldn't it? Nobody could have prophesied that. Lance Armstrong winning again, both mountain stages in the Tour de France. And here we go. Well, it might well be, because this is the only man that's stopping Armstrong at the moment from thinking about that way. He's riding on the wheels of the Banesto boys, Beltran and Zoller. So it could be his hat-trick. There was a rest day in between, but I suspect we still call it a hat-trick, wouldn't we?
The last time somebody won both of these stages was 1952, and that was Fausto Coppi. And that performance was the opposite way round, because he won at the Alpe d'Huez the first time and then went on to win at Sestriere. And I tell you what, they've cleared the gap behind Stéphane Heulot now, and the yellow jersey group is coming in very quickly.
Now then, the motorbikes will have to come out soon as well. Heulot is having all sorts of pain here now, as he just wants to try and survive. He's in and out of the saddle. This is such a cruel climb, and it is nice and warm here now, which is great for the spectators, but I think the riders might like it a little bit cooler. Virenque then in that polka dot jersey latched onto the back and has done nothing yet but follow wheels, and the same has to be said by Alex Zoller here. Since that one attack which Armstrong answered, they've all gone back into the pack, and they're playing into Lance's hands right now, because I don't believe he's tired at all.
It looks very cool. The Italians have got a representative in this very elite group as well. This is Giuseppe Guerini wearing number 24 there. That was the pink and white jersey on the back for Team Telecom, so at least the Italians have got something to shout about, and probably the fact of the presence of Gianni Bugno as well, who's here at the finish line today, will make them quite happy.
And of the 6 Italian wins here, Fausto Coppi's got 1 and Gianni Bugno has 2. He's won up here twice, and that's why he's come this year, and maybe he will cheer Guerini over the line first. But this man is still hanging on. Nice to see the British flag there. It'll be a little way to Chris Boorman, but he is coming. We've seen Chris in a big group alongside Stuart O'Grady when they came over the top of the Col de la Croix de Fer. So he will safely arrive here and well inside the time limit too at the finish line.
The pain on Stéphane Heulot's face now is really starting to tell. He wonders, why have I been out here for so long? Why can't I just find that little bit more energy? He can hardly outpace these spectators running up alongside him, but right there you can see now for the first time the yellow jersey group of Lance Armstrong.
So it's been relentless pressure, and this has been a marvellous performance by Stéphane Heulot. He's made his big effort, but it looks as though it's going to come to an end somewhere in the region of 3.5 kilometres from the line. There's the 4, so I guess it'll be 3.5.
Heulot now is really broken. He knows where he has to go. He can look up to the right-hand side there and see the summit of the Alpe d'Huez. The time advantage he has is inside 10 seconds, so very shortly he'll be put out of his agony. And Armstrong still looking very comfortable, but so too is Tonkov.
I've hardly seen Lance Armstrong even come out of the saddle on this climb, which in itself is almost unthinkable. You see how the 2 leaders are in and out of the saddle all the time, including Zoller. And Guerini sitting at the back here, also looking like a man that might have a little sprint in his legs tonight.
Guerini sitting at the back there, representing Team Telecom, the dominant team of the Tour de France over the last 2 or 3 years. And this is the moment that Stéphane Heulot did not want to see on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez. He didn't want to see the big group coming up to him. He thought he had enough advantage at the bottom of the climb, but after a long breakaway, the Frenchman's been brought back into the fold.
You have to feel sorry. He shook his head there, and I do believe he's going to try and hang on, but he won't, because the speed now will be just simply too high. They are now racing for the first prize today. £5,000 it is for the first man over the line, but it's more than that. When you win at Alpe d'Huez, nobody ever forgets. They could name every winner up here since Fausto Coppi back in 1952.
Alex Zoller very happily sitting in the wheel of his teammate there. All of these riders now thinking about the victory at the end of the Alpe d'Huez. Stéphane Heulot's done a great job. He's recovered.
Well,
he's really digging deep to stay on the back of this very elite group.
Well, good for him. He's taken the wheel of Guerini at the back here, the Italian riding this year in the Team Telecom colours from Germany. Normally we see Jan Ullrich coming up, or Bjarne Riis at this point of the Tour de France, but they're both out this year with injury. as we still try to keep the pace steady at the front. Beltran doing a superb job for Alex Zülle, who must be a little tired at finishing second to Lance Armstrong in this Tour de France so far. With him, I mean, Zülle will be up to at least third place now overall, with the loss of Christophe Moreau. And of course, we haven't seen Abraham Olano for a while. He's been dropped.
Abraham Olano was dropped almost immediately. The accelerations came at the foot of the climb. This is the part of Alpe d'Huez that Stephen Roach would probably call fairly easy. It does level out somewhat when you get to this point here. In fact, Olano is 1 minute behind this group at the moment.
Well, if he loses 1.5, he will lose his second place to Alex Zülle today, because Zülle is right in that group. This year, the Tour de France also giving time bonuses for every stage of the road stages. So there's a 20-second win bonus as well on top of the Alpe d'Huez this year. And that's the first time that has happened.
Beltran now sitting on the front, just digging very deep. He wants to keep this group as compact as possible. He doesn't want any attacks to come from Fernando Escartin, currently in third position there in the green and white jersey of the Kelme squad. Armstrong still in fourth place, looking very comfortable, but he'll be waiting for the attacks to come now, and if somebody does attack, he will respond immediately.
Well, Beltran has an absolutely superb ride up this climb. Completely sacrificed any chance of winning in favour of Alex Zülle. Zülle grits his teeth there. Sits in the slipstream of his teammate. He doesn't want to go through yet. 3 kilometres or so to go up to the finishing line now. This is a very select group, and sadly Stéphane Heulot has now been dropped off the tail of it.
Fernando Escartin in third position there, just looking over his shoulder, having a quick look at the face of Lance Armstrong, trying to read whether there's any sign of weakness, trying to find out whether Armstrong is having a bad day, because they say that you always have at least one bad day in the Tour de France, and if you do, you've got to try and hide it.
8 riders coming up towards the summit of Alpe d'Huez. I don't think we've ever seen that before, Paul.
Have to go back a long way through the history books to find when there's been such a large group at the front of a mountain stage of the Tour de France, and especially the Alpe d'Huez. For the moment, though, it's a big battle between the Banesto team and the Kelme team to try and dislodge Armstrong, who's comfortably sitting there in fourth place.
Well, if it comes up in a group this size and nobody attacks Armstrong, he carries a pretty mean punch in a sprint finish, and it could well be another stage win for him and a 20-second win bonus, and that really would put the Tour de France out the window for the rest.
It's a very difficult sprint to judge up here, though. There was a man by the name of Jean-René Bernadotte who thought he was going to win here at the Alpe d'Huez. He was always, throughout his career, the rider who used to use massive gears, and when he came to the finish in Alpe d'Huez, he misjudged it, put it onto the small chainring, and got blown away by Peter Winnen.
And Winnen, in fact, a great name for a Dutchman, Winnen. As an attack goes here for Guerini has gone. Guerini has jumped here. Stefano Guerini, or Giuseppe Guerini rather. Now Tonkov, he looks as though he's trying to answer. Zülle is going to have to dig deep and pay back his teammate, I think. But Guerini is trying to make it. They've all sat up except Guerini.
Tonkov couldn't do it. He tries to close the gap. He accelerated but was unable to. There was nothing left. Now he's leaving it up to Alex Zülle. Zülle wants the victory today, so he's left his teammate Beltran behind. He's closing the gap. Escartin is up into second position there. Armstrong has responded perfectly.
Well, gone is Beltran by that attack. He's now been tailed off, so it's up to Zülle on his own versus Armstrong. This rider, we expected to have a go here because he is a beautiful little climber, and he comes from Italy, and he can shake hands with Gianni Bugno at the top if he hangs on. But he's going to make a big effort here, and there may be no reaction from Lance Armstrong because he's more concerned at the whereabouts of Alex Zülle. Guerini overall is 14th, and he is 11 minutes back overall, so Lance isn't going to chase him down.
He won't be too worried, but one man has responded again. There's the green and white jersey, Fernando Escartin. He wants the victory here, and he's going to try and close it down. He's blown away Alex Zülle, and immediately moving up into second place was Lance Armstrong.
Now, Armstrong does not seem to want to let Escartin get out of his sight. He does see him as a danger, especially with the Pyrenees still to come, because they're not very far away from Spain. And Armstrong is going to watch if Escartin attacks. I'm not sure he can go much quicker.
He said for the last couple of days the men that he does fear the most are Fernando Escartin and Alex Zülle, and he's got both of them in his sights at the moment. He's sitting there comfortably in third place, keeping an eye on them, but whenever they do accelerate, he responds immediately.
And Virenque is watching the party take place all around him and doing absolutely nothing. And if Guerini comes back, I think Virenque will make his move.
Good move by Guerini. He let the other big guns of the Tour de France battle it out. They launched their attacks. He just sat there comfortably waiting for them to weaken a little bit, and then he hit them just at the right time. Tonkov tried to go across, but he was not able to.
Well, Guerini was brought to the team to help Bjarne Riis and Jan Ulrich And instead he's turned out to be the team leader in this Tour de France, and now they're going after him as they start to react. Now it's going to be a pretty tough one. The Mapei rider Pavel Tonkov is now attacking yet again as we nip under the banner 2 kilometers from the finish. This will damage the attack of Guerini.
Good move by Tonkov, but again the response coming behind. This time it's again Fernando Escartin, Alex Zülle. Look at the faces on these guys. They really are suffering as they approach the summit of the Alpe d'Huez. And Armstrong's face showing no emotion at all, just total concentration.
And if they keep attacking him like this and he just keeps on pedaling like this, he's going to go and finish it all off for himself. There's an awful lot of Americans on the Alpe today waiting to see their man come home. 16 seconds is the first time check we've had with Guerini. And they haven't, that attack hasn't really damaged his breakaway at all. He's only just over a mile from the line now, and a massive crowd welcomes the Tour de France to Alpe d'Huez, and the man in yellow is there, and he's hardly conceding a second of his lead.
The most important men for him to watch are the 2 men in front of him on the left in the green, Escartin and Zülle. I would have expected Richard Virenque to try and attack, but Virenque is in serious difficulty here. He's just surviving, holding onto the back wheel of this group, just trying to stay with them.
Nobody showing an interest in Guerini, who may well have played the winning card today and would become what would be the 7th Italian cyclist, or 7th Italian victory here, not the 7th Italian cyclist to win at Alpe d'Huez. Guerini getting on to the easier slopes now, where he can accelerate through the gears as he races across the town.
Picking it up now in the town. This is an easiest part now. He's picking it up to around about 35 kilometers an hour, but it is still very difficult. He's got one more corner up in front of him, and then he will be coming onto the town square, and he will accelerate. And unless something very dramatic happens behind, the victory is going to go to this little Italian climber wearing number 24. Giuseppe Guerini is out of the saddle. An attack again coming from Tonkov. Tonkov really wants the victory today, and now a response coming from behind.
So the attack again is starting, and this time it's trying to split up the field at the back, but it looks as though this man, who's tried at least 4 times to break away, Paul, this may be the one. He's looked over his shoulder.
He wants it. He really wants to get clear. He's attacked 4 or 5 times to try and get rid of the other riders. There was a big recovery in the group of the yellow jersey there because Beltran came back. 1 kilometer left to go, 1,000 meters for Giuseppe Guerini. He goes under the banner, and he knows what the finish is going to be like. They go across the town square to the roundabout and turn left, and in front of him is the most beautiful finish for a climber.
Well, Guerini has only one... that is disgraceful. Right in the way of going. A spectator got in the way. Well, I can't believe that. I've never seen that happen before here at Alpe d'Huez. And that man, I was about to tell you, was going to his first victory of the season. Well, Paul, look at that. Standing in the middle, this man is going to have one of the saddest memories ever of his visit to Alpe d'Huez. Now, the adrenaline flows, and he's still away. He's got to win.
Unbelievable to go down like that. There will be a big response behind. His advantage was just 16 seconds. He realizes now he's got to really pick it up again, but he's going to be nervous now. He's going to be really pumping the adrenaline around his body. He's now onto the town square. It's going to be a flat section, but he's managed to get up, and that was amazing that he got up so quickly.
This amazing Tour de France is producing surprise after surprise. There isn't a person here now that won't want this man to win his stage, and I think he's going to do it anyway. The adrenaline is pouring down. He's going to zip his jersey up and look as smart as he can despite the dirt on it, because Guerini is going to get the victory for Italy despite what happened in that last few meters of the stage. He's now barely scurrying across the square here, looking over his shoulder, but it's his. It's going to be safe, and nobody will take it off him. He won't do anything to alter the overall situation. Watch the left-hander. People have misjudged it before. Now he sees the finish, and he sees the finishing banner. So Guerini will take the victory here today, and he will deserve it too. Giuseppe Guerini, he's never won a race this season, and now he's going to win here at Alpe d'Huez, the best place in the world to win a professional bike race. The 2-arm salute is going to come, but for a moment there, his heart must have stopped. He is the winner of the stage. He might move up a little bit in the overall classification, but he won't affect the big lead of Lance Armstrong yet. There's the race round the corner now for second place, but it looks as though Tonkov will survive as the sprint starts with Escartin. Lance Armstrong dives across the road. He just wants to finish in the same time as those riders, as Tonkov comes up conceding 20 seconds on the line. Escartin followed up by Alex Zülle, and then the yellow jersey, Richard Virenque, and they're all safely in, just. And the arrival of the brave Stéphane Heulot, just a little bit off the pace, but not a lot. He struggled his way up Alpe d'Huez, having been caught just on 3.5 kilometres from the finish. His team car encouraging him on as he races up towards the line, just over 1.5 minutes behind the finish there of Guerini. The picture will be good, but the story could have been one of disaster. How Guerini didn't break his collarbone, we'll never know. And after this, Giuseppe Guerini just had to win the stage. It was his first ever stage win in his third Tour de France, and what a way to get it. I'm not surprised he's happy. Abraham Olano continued to struggle, another 2 minutes plus lost today, and he's just held on now to his second place overall. While Chris Boardman, he finished in the autobus today at Alpe d'Huez, but I think he'll be happy enough with that. And tonight, Guerini joins Coppi, Bugno, Conti and Pantani as an Italian winner at Alpe d'Huez. But what about that crash? Well, here's what he had to say.
Sì, ho visto che si è messo in mezzo alla strada per fare una foto, poi io ho deciso se passare a destra o a sinistra e per tagliare la strada e farla più corta sono andato a sinistra e lui si è spostato proprio a sinistra e mi è venuto addosso.
Overall, Armstrong keeps all of his gains he got in Sestria yesterday. Zuller moves up to third and almost second. Olano had better watch out. Dufault, Tonkov and Veronk are all closing in. While Lance Armstrong will remember the Alps with fondness as he continues now in yellow tomorrow. But first of all, here he is with Paul Sherry.
Would you not like to have won at Alpe d'Huez because the last American to win here was Andy Hampson, your former teammate?
It's definitely a stage that is special, and it's actually more special than most because it holds so much mystique. But you can't win every day.
Any thoughts of responding to the attack of Guerini, or were you just happy to keep an eye on Escartin and Zuller?
Yeah, no, I needed to. Today I didn't need to attack, and I didn't need to try and win. I needed to keep my rivals in check, and Olano was dropped, and some other favorites were dropped, so it was a good situation. The only thing I needed to do is be steady.
Well done, Lance, and for the record, Richard Veronk improves his lead in the King of the Mountains, while Stuart O'Grady, who finished in the autobus along with Chris Boardman today, also stays ahead in the green jersey competition. And so to the 11th stage, 195.5 kilometres. The mountains are more or less behind us now as we run towards Saint-Etienne, but as Paul Sherry knows, it's pretty hilly around the back of the city.
It certainly is. This is the next 4 days of the Tour de France feel are going to be very difficult, although they are leaving the Alps behind. These roads around here leading down to the Pyrenees are very difficult, and the temperature, although it says 25 degrees Celsius, can climb up very easily to 35 degrees C and make it a very difficult, long, hard day in the saddle.
And it wouldn't be a Tour de France, wouldn't it, without the sunflowers there. But this man not interested in looking at the flowers because he was in a group which broke away, and he's gone clear of that group now, and we're just under 30 kilometres from the finish. Ludo Dirksen, the champion of Belgium, he's only won one race this year, and that was it.
If you're going to win one race, it might as well be the national champion, because you get yourself a pretty smart jersey that you can put on your shoulders for the next 12 months. But this man rode a brilliant race at the Belgian Championships just 1 week before the start of the Tour de France, and I was surprised to see him attack this group of riders that he was with. There were in fact 7 riders got clear of the peloton, built themselves up a lead in excess of 16 minutes, and they're now on the final climb of the day, the Col de la Croix de Chabouret, and there's no reaction at all, Phil, in the main field.
Well, it's like a club run at the back, because they're more than 16 minutes behind now as they've gone under that 25 kilometres to go banner, because all the riders who broke away here didn't affect the overall by a long way, and this rider has decided to go for what would be the greatest moment of a career which has not been going very long. He turned professional at 29 because he was a truck driver. He used to paint them, in fact, and now he's found himself as a good bike rider. Arriving in Saint-Etienne then, Ludo Dirksens has a good lead over the rest of the breakaway. They've tried to chase him down the mountains, but to no avail at all. He's going to enjoy this next couple of minutes now.
This is a great moment for a man to be able to win a stage of the Tour de France, but even to win a stage of the Tour de France with a national champion's jersey on your shoulders, it is magnificent. He doesn't have too much to worry about because the rest of the group, Phil, are more than a minute behind.
And the main field has now been timed at more than 20 minutes behind. So Ludo Dirksen is going to climb up the overall classification tonight, but it won't worry him too much because he started the day 74 minutes behind Lance Armstrong. He won't be thinking about that now. Now, the race here for second place, and Alexander Vinokourov leading them out. I must say, a rider we expected to be in for the overall, but hasn't been. Vladimir Belli then going for it now. Vladimir Belli, and also in third line is Konishev, who's having his his best tour for years here, Dmitry Konishev. Now, he used to be a good sprinter. He's won the last stage in Paris before now, and it looks like he's going to have a clear shot at second place. So Konishev coming forward, just getting Vinokurov on the line, and behind comes Vladimir Belly. And the rest of the breakaway drifting in. There's the time gap to the right of the screen. Rick Verbrugge there. Another Belgian, but this is the Belgian who'll grab the headlines tomorrow. The champion of Belgium, Ludo Dirksen's getting his first stage win in the Tour. Here's the main field. Look at the clock on the left, but Eric Zabel still needs points for that green jersey of Stuart O'Grady, and he wins the bunch sprint as well. That was for 8th place today. And again, he has beaten Stuart O'Grady in a sprint. This is the man who gets the flowers today in Saint-Etienne, though. The end of the 11th stage, Ludo Dirksen's ahead of Dmitry Konishev, Vinokurov, Belly and Verbrugge. Overall, though, no change at all. Alano, Zuller, Dufaux, Escartine are still the riders closest to Lance Armstrong. And the next, as we look down here on the city of Saint-Etienne, the riders now will continue what will be hot and sultry days as we head towards the south and our next destination, the Pyrenees. And so to stage 12, 201 kilometres from Saint-Galmier down to Saint-Flour. And the undulations continue under a very hot sun today, Paul.
Well, these days are really going to wear out the US Postal Service team, Phil, because for the last few days, all they have been doing is sitting on the front of the main pack. Despite the fact that the breakaways have been going clear, they've had to assume control of the race, and that is going to wear them down. The breakaway got away again today, and it was David Echavarria who led them into the town.
And among the riders abandoning, Ivan Gotti has gone today, and this rider dreaming now of his first stage win in his Tour de France, because he's now heading up to what is a nasty little climb up towards the finishing line. He was part of a group of 14 riders, and he's now decided to give it a go for the finish.
It's really going to be a question of survival. His advantage over these chasing group of 3 is in only 20 seconds at the moment. Francois Simon is leading them, the French national champion. He's looking for a victory for France. Alberto Eli is the telecom rider in the pink and white jersey, and Steve de Wolf is the Belgian rider just on the back. In fact, Echavarria has stretched it out to 24 seconds, and the rest of the group more than a minute behind.
And we've called it the Stéphane Heulot group. That man has been in so many escapes, and he's yet to get a result out of a day's racing in the Tour de France. He came close at Alpe d'Huez. 2 kilometres to go now for the 3 pursuers of de Wolf, Eli and Simon, but they're getting no closer to little David Echavarria. He is a rider that started out as a sprinter, having been the ex-amateur champion of Spain, but he's developed into a very good stage race rider because he's won the Tour de l'Avenir, what used to be known as the amateur Tour de France, and now it looks as though the pressure's going on here now as again Francois Simon is trying to go clear as he races under the kilometre to go.
Well, Simon got a lone victory at the National Championships himself just 1 week before the Tour de France, and this was the kind of finish that it was, but he's not going to do anything to catch David Echavarria because today the victory is going to go to Spain.
So the Once boys are losing ground with their team leader Abraham Olano, but this young man is very much going forward now. His first stage victory in a Tour de France, and he's making the most of this. Little David Echavarria. And a good breakaway, late as it was by the champion of France, but still the French are being denied a stage win in this year's Tour. As they come up to the line, it's Simon gets second this time around. And they're still looking for a stage win. It's never happened, by the way, when they haven't won at least one stage since 1926. Here comes Alberto Eli. He will go across the line in 3rd place. And none of these riders, by the way, approaching Lance Armstrong in that leader's yellow jersey. So Lance Armstrong quite happy with the way the race is going at the moment, as the riders will continue through the heat of this area. The main field again are losing big chunks of time today, and again Zabel is proving best of the rest. So Zabel now is beginning to prove he is the best man for that green jersey. There's the result of the day, and Frédéric Bessy of France getting 7th place. All these riders in the original breakaway. Hello and welcome to the Tour de France. Well, yesterday should have been a fairly routine stage through the Massif Central, but for some of the riders it brought all of the emotions of this great event. Happiness, sadness and mixed feelings. It was happiness for little Spaniard David Echavarria, who won the stage, his first in a Tour. For Stéphane Heulot of France, part of yesterday's long escape, he climbed to 6th overall. but it was sadness for the Swede Magnus Backstedt, who, with an injured knee, retired in tears. Australian Stuart O'Grady has hated these travel days between the Alps and the Pyrenees, and yesterday he trailed home and lost his green jersey to Eric Zabel. Another Aussie, Jay Sweet, carries the weight of the Lanterne Rouge, and the last man of the Tour, although playing to the crowd, is very tired. And even the favourites made mistakes. Abraham Olano lost 2 seconds in the uphill finish as Lance Armstrong and Alex Zülle sprinted ahead. Overall, Lance Armstrong still has his lead intact, while Alex Zülle is now only 3 seconds behind Abraham Olano. Up into the top 8 is Stéphane Heulot. And to add to a controversial day, Lance Armstrong, who conserved his big lead, has found other adversaries among the media. Some newspapers, especially here in France, are alluding to the fact he must be taking illegal stimulants. Because of these spurious remarks, Lance Armstrong walked to the obligatory anti-doping control yesterday without speaking to anyone, and it will stay that way until a press conference on Monday afternoon. That was confirmed by the team's general manager, Mark Gorski, when he spoke to Paul Showing this morning on the telephone from the team's hotel just before they left for the start.
He and I have decided that he's just going to take 2 or 3 days where he's going to take some time off from doing the interviews just to provide him a little more time to recuperate. Well, I think Lance is, without question, the best athlete in the professional peloton. He doesn't need any performance-enhancing substances to be the best, and I think the fact that it's a fairly level playing field this year is why he's winning the race. I think he's angered by the allegations, and there's certainly no truth to them at all. He's taken a couple days off, as we just said, from any more media interviews. He's done an awful lot in the last week, and he will be doing a press conference on Monday afternoon.
He is definitely not taking performance-enhancing drugs. Can you confirm that?
Yeah, it's part of a very strong team policy that we have on the U.S. Postal Service team. It's in every rider's contract. There's no gray areas like there may be on some other teams, and we're very clear on it. And I have no doubts that Lance is absolutely clean and looks forward to a strong last few days of the Tour de France.
Well, there's no doubt that some sections of the press, mainly French, simply cannot accept that Lance Armstrong is winning this Tour de France by such a great margin. But the thing is, but for the crash of Alex Zülle, the gaps would be a lot closer, I'm sure of that. Anyway, this is now the longest stage of the race at 236.5 kilometres or 148 miles as they go away from Saint-Flour to Albi, and we can expect again a very hot day.
This is one of the stages that Armstrong was pretty worried about, Phil, because there are 7 climbs on the day and hardly any flat at all. And the breakaway got to get away again early on, and at first sprint point at L'Aiguillole, they had 8 minutes and 30 seconds over the group. But for Lance, it was a bad day because he lost another teammate. Peter Meinhardt-Nielsen was forced to abandon with an injured knee.
And that's sad because the 2 previous years the US Postal Service have ridden the Tour, they've never lost a man. Now this year they've lost 2 men with injury, both with injury really, thinning them down to 7 riders. Abraham Olano here, back in the main field and still working out where on earth he can go in this year's Tour now. Onto the Côte de la Moisette, and the breakaway still well clear here, 96 kilometres covered and 13 minutes 15 seconds the advantage as Mariano Piccoli leads them over the top of the climb.
A good move by Mariano Piccoli to get himself into this group because he can pick up points along the whole of the stage, and that will drag him a lot closer to the lead of Richard Virenque. The main field not worried at all about any of the riders in that group, 18 minutes 31 seconds behind.
Well, the Kelme team has started to ride now because they're endangering their team position overall with Spanish riders in the breakaway, but it won't affect these 2 riders here now at 1 kilometre to go because we've got Salvatore Camesso and Cipollini is the rider who's gone. Little Camesso in his first Tour de France, he won just before the start the Italian Championship. He hasn't won many races. The only other victory he's got is a stage of the Tour of the Cape in South Africa, and that is more or less an open race. Now he's coming up towards the back wheel of Cipollini. If he can get into the slipstream, Paul, he might just about win it.
Well, he's just done it. He scrambled to get back onto the wheel of Marco Cipollini, a former junior world champion. He's a very good rider indeed, but he doesn't have the great sprint. But Cipollini has attacked 2 or 3 times to try and put Commesso into difficulty, but now Commesso has him just where he wants him, and he's going to force his compatriot here to lead out the sprint.
Well, there were originally a breakaway of 15 riders here. These two made a go for it. It's worked now because I don't think the rest are going to come back here. Cipollini, he put himself on the front, and there's no way the other Italian is going to come round until he sees that finish line barrier. He's going to force Cipollini to lead out, and this is it now. He's going to have to give it his best shot right down the barriers. Look at the face, though, of the little man, Salvatore Commesso, former European road racing champion. He now goes clear, and Cipollini knows it's all over. So it's always nice to win when you're the champion of Italy, and he's done it this time. Bugno has done it in the Tour de France, and so too has Mario Cipollini.
A great win. Once he got in front of Marco Cipollini, there was never going to be any challenge at all. This man has been great over the first week of the Tour de France for Mario Cipollini, but now with Cipollini's withdrawal, he gets the chance to ride for himself, and he's done it to pretty good success this afternoon.
Well, this is the race for third place here now, the remnants of that big breakaway, and Piccoli is not only a good climber but a very good sprinter as well, which is unusual. He gets the third place ahead of Paolo Lanfranchi, and Roland Meyer was the rider across the line there in 5th. But the winner today, the champion of Italy, Salvatore Commesso, and in his first Tour de France as well. And again, Eric Zabel now back in the green jersey, cleaning up in the bunch sprint and nudging further ahead of arch-rival Stuart O'Grady there. Abraham Olano still second overall in this race. No change at all in the overall classification, but it was a hard day of racing nonetheless. And it's also another day knocked off now as we go one day to the rest day of 199 kilometres from Castres down to Saint-Gaudens, where the riders have a day off right in the shadow of the Pyrenees. And then the big boys must come out and fight once again. The beauty of this little town of Castres, as this is the Tour village where the riders come along and talk to the people before the race gets underway. And then once out on the open highway today, well, they kept it together for a while, but soon a breakaway of 6 was trying to get clear of the field. And the towns in this area had really turned out the style for the passage of the riders in the Tour de France. The beauty of the Tour under the escort of the US Postal Service's riders, who really have rallied around their team leader and the race leader, of course, Lance Armstrong. In the heat of the day, as the race goes down towards the far south of a beautiful country, nobody was in any hurry at all. The peloton dragging their heels a little bit, 14 minutes and 7 seconds back.
This leading group of riders feel once again taking advantage of the fact that the US Postal Service are not chasing down the breakaways. They're leaving it up to the Spanish teams, who are now fighting to try and gain control of the king of the teams competition. The Spanish teams are really at the top of that competition at the moment.
An interesting diversion for Lance Armstrong today, but if you want to know what it's like to be a prize winner in the Tour de France, well, ask Paul Sherwin.
This is the finish line of the Tour de France. You've just come across it in first place. What happens next? You've got to run the gauntlet through a melee of journalists, photographers, cameramen. But the green shirts, the security men of the Tour de France, they bring you in here. After 5 hours in the saddle, you've got to negotiate this really bad surface. But once you get into there, it's a quick wash down and a nice clean jersey. Immediately after that, you're brought into here. This is the holding area. This is reserved for champions, the green jersey, the yellow jersey, and the King of the Mountains, not to forget the winner of the stage. Once you hear the Tour de France anthem, you can walk out here nice and relaxed onto the top step of the podium. You can receive the accolades of the crowd. I don't know what that's like because I've never been there. I wonder who it's going to be today.
Well, never mind, Paul, you did come pretty close, I'll give you that. 20 kilometres to go now for the breakaway that's deciding this 14th stage, taking us down now towards the finish at Saint-Gaudens, a breakaway which started, in fact, at 71 kilometres today.
Unbelievable again, Bill. The speed has been so high. The first hour of racing, 46 kilometres an hour and 44 kilometres an hour in the second hour. That's why these guys have managed now to build up such a huge lead. And all the time on the front of the main field over the first 2 hours, it was the US Postal Service. But once this group started to get a big advantage, again, it was the Spanish teams who came to the front to start to organise the chase. Under the last kilometre, though, it's 2 riders managed to get clear. Dmitry Konichev, now he's won stages in the Tour de France before. He's won the last stage in Paris, but he hasn't won a stage for a couple of years.
And in fact, 8 years since he's won the stage. Vladimir Belly, by the way, was the best placed to this breakaway, 31st overall, 26 minutes off the pace. But these two are going to fight out the finish now. Now, normally Konichev is a very fast finisher, but he's got Fares in here from the Mappe team. And in fact, Konichev is not willing to take the lead out, even though he knows that Lely is coming up quickly. And in fact, the Italian has panicked. Farazin has gone first. He's gone far too early here, and that's why he's sat up. But you see Konichev, who knows this man very well because Konichev lives in Italy. He's had a lot of firsts for Russia as a professional. He was the first world medalist in Chambéry when he got silver. He was the first man to pull on the polka dot jersey as leader of the King of the Mountains in the Tour de France for Russia. Now he'd like to continue his winning ways with another stage victory here. Remember, it's 8 years since he won, and that was in Paris in 1991. And now he goes again, and this time I think it's for real now, because Dmitry Konichev of Russia is going to make it fairly easy. Farazin did his best. It all didn't work out for him. He gets second, and Lely gets a frustrated third. Now the race from the rest here as they come up to the wine. That is Weisserman, who comes in, followed by Jackie Giron and the rest of that breakaway group. But here's the man who gets the glory, Dmitry Konichev of Russia, who now lives in Italy. And a victory for Mercatoni Uno, which is the team, of course, of Marco Pantani. And so he gets to salute the crowd again, despite the age catching up with him. The sprint here now, some 13 minutes has gone by, and again a battle between O'Grady and Zabel, going the way of Eric Zabel. But Dmitry Konichev can now add Saint-Gaudens to his stage victories in the past at Pau, Aix-les-Bains and at Paris. But this man, Lance Armstrong, is still having to deny the fact he is not taking drugs in this Tour de France, and the press are saying he is.
And I can emphatically say I'm not on drugs. I thought a rider with my history and my health situation, and also with the results of my career, I would have thought that it shouldn't be such a surprise. Okay, I was surprised to have certain good days, but I'm not a new rider, and I'm sure that there's been some looking and prying and digging. I know there has been, but it's been a week and nothing's been found. You're not going to find anything. If it's L'Equipe, if it's Channel 4, if it's a Spanish paper, Dutch paper, Belgian paper, there's nothing to find. And I think once everybody gets done doing their due diligence, and once everybody realizes that they need to be professionals and they can't print a bunch of crap, then they'll realize that they're dealing with a clean guy. I mean, it's unfortunate that the yellow jersey of the Tour de France always has to defend drugs, or say something about drugs, but c'est la vie.
Well, I suppose it's performances like this one at Sestriere which has brought the doubters out in force.
You know, the only thing I can, like I said a minute ago, is I can assert my innocence. Certainly I've never tested positive. I've never been caught with anything. France is a country that has been very strict against doping, both from a federation standpoint, from a race standpoint, from a police standpoint. I would remind the people that I live in France. I raced all year in France. I did my Tour de France preparation in France. I did training camps in France. I'm always in France. If I had something to hide, I think I would stay away from France.
A lot of people who watch our programs have heard of your illness and see you winning now and think it's nothing short of a miracle. Do you see it that way?
It is a miracle, because 15 or 20 years ago I wouldn't be alive, much less be riding a bike or starting the Tour de France or leading the Tour de France. So yes, I think it's a miracle.
Given that there was all this stuff in the French papers, are you surprised in a room full, maybe half full of French journalists, that none of the people who have presumably written all the stuff about you have had the nerve to ask you about it face to face?
I would say some of the questions asked have pertained to that, and I've answered them. I've asserted, I don't need to do it again, I've said I'm innocent. I've sort of given some facts that I think support that.
if they're here, they can certainly ask the questions.
Hello again and welcome to Tour Plus and our extended coverage this year of the Tour de France. We're now facing up to 2 tough days in the Pyrenees, and this is the finishing line of the first day, the little town of Puy-en-Velay. It's never played host to the Tour de France before. Well, yesterday Lance Armstrong called a press conference in Saint-Gaudens, and he went a long way to convincing the press he really is riding this tour without taking drugs. There was even a moment of humour. One of the journalists stood up and said, "But Lance, tomorrow all of the Spanish riders are going to attack." And Lance goes, "What?" He says, "Well, thanks for the tip. I'll try and counter the moves." But there was a black mark on the tour yesterday, the sudden departure of the Belgian rider Ludo Dirksens. Let's go now to Gary IMLACH, who is in Saint-Gaudens, to give us an update on that.
Last Thursday, Ludo Dirksens was a great story. The 34-year-old former factory worker from Belgium, who'd only turned pro 4 years ago, won his national championship and then followed that up by taking a stage win in his debut Tour de France. The story that's emerging now is a bit messier. What seems to have happened is that when Dirksens won his stage in Saint-Etienne, he feared that he was going to test positive for a corticosteroid that he says he took without his team's knowledge to help him get over a knee injury he'd suffered in the Tour of Germany. So, before he could be caught, he decided to declare it. In fact, though, he tested positive for nothing but urine. By then, though, it was too late. His team, Lampre, suspended him for taking what can be a permissible drug if it's given under prescription, and his tour was over. And if that's the whole story, then Dirksens is guilty of not much more than stupidity. Certainly on the Richter scale of Tour de France drug scandals, this one is struggling to register.
Well, thanks, Gary. In addition to Dirksens, 2 other non-starters this morning from the Seiko team, Giuseppe Calcaterra and Mario Sciria. So they're also out. And as the field roll away, 11 o'clock in the morning, facing up to this tough day in the Pyrenees, 149 riders still left in the Tour, and this is how the top 8 look. Lance Armstrong, 7:44 ahead of Olano and 7:47 ahead of Alex Zula. Fernando Escartin, a Spanish rider, can be expected to make some moves today. Stéphane Heulot, still the best Frenchman, lying there in 6th place.
Great conditions for the riders today, clear skies with a bit of cloud build-up in the latter part of the afternoon. The wind will be predominantly easterly, but it will be a tailwind up the valley towards Saint-Laurent. But towards the end, the temperature will be dropping to 15 degrees Celsius, having been at 25 degrees along most of the valley roads.
And the first sprint today at Fronsac, 23 kilometres under the wheels. A familiar battle this between the green jersey of Zabel and the green and white of Stuart O'Grady. Zabel getting the better of O'Grady. Stefan Weissermann coming in there in 3rd place. And here's the rider we expect some fireworks from today. 2nd overall in the race, the Spanish captain, Abraham Olano, who leads the Once team into battle for sure. And the man who we won't see at the front today, Jay Sweet. He jacks everybody up. 2 hours, 35 minutes he's lost, but his ambition is to see Paris, and we hope he does. Well, the action is on, and it's really put the US Postal team under pressure here. We've gone over the top of the Col des Arts, where the race was all together. The race being out-sprinted at the top there. Mario Piccoli was winning there, ahead of Richard Virenque and Stefano Gazzelli. Everybody was together, and then the attack started on the descent. We're now on the climb of the Col de Monte. Some 10 kilometres to go to the top. After a gentle start today, Paul, with the race being kept together, everybody having a little laugh and a joke, it's all changed now because attack has followed attack.
Well, they may have laughed and joked, but they didn't do it for very long, because obviously the big tactics today is coming from Team Kelme. They've put 2 riders up the road at the moment. One of those is Jose Javier Gomez, and Javier Ochoa, the man who fell off a couple of days ago. In fact, he's now in the front group. And all of this is to try and put pressure on the US Postal Service. But once again, Phil, they haven't been rattled. They've let these riders go on up the road to organize themselves into a breakaway, and you can see a big long line of US Postal on the front. This is the day when they must be the most worried, because there are so many climbs one after the other.
The day has started out fairly routinely for US Postal. They were riding along in the big field, everybody having a laugh and a joke and just gently rolling out. The good news is the weather is beautiful, and so we hope there'll be no bad weather in the high climbs today. But once they started the climbs, it was the Benesto team who started putting riders up front, and that's a typical tactic no doubt ordered by their top man, Alex Zula, to start the attacks early today, because if they are going to take time off Lance Armstrong, they're going to have to do the attacks very early on to weaken the team around Armstrong and then isolate him and try and then hit him hard himself. We'll see if that's what happens, but right now the US Postal not panicking, Paul. They're keeping the rhythm well. They've got a breakaway up front, none of those riders affecting Lance Armstrong's overall position, and they certainly look very impressive right now.
No sign of panic at all. Armstrong really is a great leader. He's boosted the morale of his troop. After that rest day, they've managed to get themselves back into form again, and they're looking now at 2 very difficult days in the mountains. There's no sign of panic. They've done exactly the same tactic as they did over the flat stages. They've let a group of riders go clear, and the most threatening to them, in fact, for the moment, is Jean-Cyril Robin of the Française des Jeux. He's 42nd overall, but he's almost 40 minutes behind Lance Armstrong. So for the moment, he doesn't have too much to worry about, and there's no panic. Big organization, really, from US Postal.
Well, this is an 11-kilometer climb, which is the best part of 7 miles. Sorry about this little bit of interference we're getting occasionally because of the way the road twists and ducks and dives, and the trees interfering with the uplinks of the signals. But even so, these are lovely pictures today, and I'm sure, Paul, the riders breathed a sigh of relief when the sun was shining over the high mountain. First time we've seen the sun over them for 48 hours.
Certainly would be. They'd be happy, because that was an incredible electric storm and a big rainstorm that came through here just yesterday and the night before as well. So the riders are a lot happier that, in fact, the sun is shining over the Pyrenees today. This is a big day for the Spanish riders as well, Phil. We can see in the breakaway there are 2 riders from Banesto, 2 riders from Kelme, and there's an Once rider present, which makes me think it might be a good time to talk about our featured rider of the day, because he's heading up towards the Spanish borders. Abraham Alano is a 29-year-old Basque, and he lives not very far away from San Sebastian. He's married to Carmel, and he has a son by the name of Xavier. He started his career off, as many of these international cyclists do, as a track rider. And in fact, he was 3 times the national champion of Spain at the sprint, the kilometre and the team pursuit. He turned professional in 1992 for the Festina team, and then he joined a class, going on to join Mapei. A short stint with Banesto, where they thought he would be the heir to Miguel Indurain's throne, but then he swapped across to ride for the big Spanish Once squad. He became the first Spaniard ever to win the World Road Race Championships in 1995, and that was in Colombia. And then the following year, he came the runner-up position in the time trial at the Olympic Games in Atlanta behind Miguel Indurain. He's had 53 professional wins to his career, but obviously the greatest one for him so far has been the Tour of Spain, which he won at the end of last season. Followed that up very rapidly by the Grand Prix Eddy Merckx and the World Championships. But he's always been regarded as the heir to Miguel Indurain, so that's why today, riding into the Pyrenees, it's a very important day for him, because currently he's 2nd in the overall standings at the Tour de France, and he'd like to go one better than that.
He certainly would, and today is going to be his big day, because he pops into Spain for just about 20 kilometres. But obviously down here in the Pyrenees, a lot of the spectators today will be Spanish.
We're still an awful long way to go to the finish line. Perron high up in the rankings. He's the most dangerous rider in this leading group of 7 now, and he's just 13 minutes 32 seconds behind Lance Armstrong. But you can see the main field is really led by the blue, black and red strip of US Postal Service. No panic at all at the moment, and riders like Frankie Andreu and George Hincapie will be the ones sacrificed over the early slopes of this climb. They're the ones who will have to put in as much work as possible to keep that breakaway not too far off the front.
Well, the list now is rather like a who's who in Spanish cycling. We've got 4 Spaniards up here, 1 rider from Kazakhstan and 2 Italians making this front group now. And this is starting to take a very interesting shape at the front.
But obviously it was going to be the tactic of the day for Banesto and Kelme to put as many riders as possible into the leading groups on the first climbs of the day, because that's the only way they feel that they can put Armstrong under pressure, get rid of his team as quickly as possible, and then launch the attacks on the final couple of climbs of the day.
The 2 Kelme boys. This is poor Renero here trying to do something. It's the first time I've seen him. He's been really suffering in this year's Tour and down on form. But he's trying to do something now on what is the last 2 days of the real mountains for the Tour de France. And when you were the previous king of the mountains of the Tour and finishing it in 4th place overall, this has been a really disastrous Tour for him.
It's been a disastrous Tour for the French as well, because they really haven't shone at all. There have been glimpses of great riding by men like Stéphane Heulot getting in the breakaway, but now in fact you can see the confirmation of the gap down to the main field. It's still hovering around. It's just gone underneath the 50-second mark. It's now 47 seconds, and we're getting news over race radio, in fact, that there's been an abandon out on the race route, and the man who's climbed off is a man who we've really respected in the Tour de France over the last few years, the Danish rider Bo Hamburger.
Yes, that's really sad, but he's never had a real shot at the Tour this year. Previous stage winner. But the reason being the Pyrenees have proved too much for him. He's just climbed off actually just before this climb began, and he has been in hospital. He's had a problem with his back. The operation was a success, but it really left him no time, Paul, to get into shape for this race.
It's difficult to come to the Tour de France and try and ride yourself into condition, especially if you've missed a whole lot of the season. Again, Team Cofidis putting the attack in at the front of the main field. This time it's Roland Meyer, 7th in the Tour de France last year. He looked at the cross at the US Postal Riders to see if there was going to be any reaction at all, and they don't care about this man. He's a long way down in the rankings, and they've allowed him to ride off the front of the group. But what it has done is provoke again an attack to come, and it looks to me as if that's Benesto trying to send another rider off the front of the main pack.
Well, they're going to keep doing this, and they're going to keep applying the pressure now, because they know they've got to attack Lance Armstrong early today. If they take him towards the finish like they did at Sestriere, then he'll ride away from them.
In fact, this is Pavel Tonkov who's decided to go for a long attack, so Armstrong is going to have to react to this one, because this man is a serious contender for the overall rankings. Tonkov is 8th, 10 minutes and 18 seconds behind Armstrong, and he's joined very rapidly by the Spanish champion there, that's Angel Casero.
Well, this is an interesting move now. What will Lance Armstrong do about this? This is Laurent Dufaux as well. Now they've decided to really hit out at the champion straight away, Paul. This is going to cause a few problems, I think, for Lance. He's got to react.
Virenka's gone across there too, the leader of the King of the Mountains competition. So all of the big challengers now have decided they want to attack early on this stage through the Pyrenees, and this is going to be a great day's racing. You see immediately, Phil, all the blue jerseys of US Postal have disappeared from the front of that pack, and Armstrong now is going to have to dig deep into his reserves, because this is going to be a long day in the saddle.
Well, there's Roland Meyer as well, and he's a strong rider in the mountains here. He's come up, they've just gone by Christophe Raniero, who's been trying for ages to catch up. This was a ploy, I think. Raniero was the first to go, but they've come up. Now Armstrong is reacting. He still has one rider with him down there. I bet it's Kevin Livingstone, as they try now to put things to rights. Very early for an attack, but they had to do this, Paul.
This is the only way to put him into difficulty, the only way to really try and dislodge him, get rid of the teammates, and then he's down to just 2 men to look after him. And you can see how those attacks have absolutely exploded that main field. There'll be a lot of riders scrambling at the back of the pack here now, trying to organize themselves into the autobus, because this is going to be a long day for the non-climbers. Those guys are really going to have to survive and ride hard to make sure they don't get eliminated.
Well, this is so early on to break the field like this. I can't believe we're watching these pictures here. The stars of the Tour de France have gone out very early on. Laurent Dufaux 4th overall here, launching an attack now and being helped too by the Cofidis rider Roland Meyer. Virenka is here, the leader in the King of the Mountains. They have gone very, very early. They've forced Armstrong to forget the shelter of his team and to start answering. This looks as though Escartine is coming up.
The green and white jersey there is Fernando Escartine. So all the big challengers of Armstrong coming out early in the day to play. There is one of the riders from US Postal, and there is Armstrong. He's noted that there's been a big attack. He looked at Dufaux, he saw Virenka going, and was worried about the presence as well of Tonkov. So he responded very quickly. But what this has done, in fact, is eliminate his teammates, and he hasn't got many left.
Well, I'm not sure the other riders have either. It's a case of the strong men here of the Tour de France making this a rather personal show right now. Dufaux looking over to see what damage his acceleration has done to the chase group. It's completely exploded the big field, and all of the non-climbers in this race must be now afraid for the rest of the day, because they didn't expect to be dragging the heels so early on the first day in the Pyrenees.
Dufaux 4th overall. This is the group of Armstrong now. You can see most of the big contenders there. There in the white jersey just in front is Alex Zuller. So Armstrong has really responded well to that attack. Here's Abraham Alana wearing number 51. And the big Belgian rider who really has been a revelation this year, Mario Arts, wearing number 81. Most of the contenders here, but there will be a few worried bodies, I think.
Well, we've still got that little breakaway up the road, and we've got so many riders in between now. We'll have to work it out as we go along with the same pictures that you have, because look at the accelerations now coming out of the field here. They're trying desperately to get a move underway here. Tonkov again, Richard Virenka goes clear. this climber with the fast acceleration. And again, we're going to have to wait and see that whether Lance can have the answers. He looks cool enough at the moment in that field, but they are playing card number one: isolate Lance Armstrong from his team.
That's the only thing they can do, and then they can try and attack him even more on the final climbs. Armstrong hasn't come round the corner yet, and this is the man who was in the breakaway earlier. This is Stefano Katai riding for Polti. He's coming backwards as the main field is attacking forwards.
In fact, these are more or less the riders in that league group. They'll be very surprised to see the heads of the Tour de France coming up at this early stage. And there's the man who started the move. Look at determination. Lost two teammates who didn't start this morning, Calcaterra and Chiria, but Laurent Dufaux knows what he's doing, and he's going to continue these accelerations till he gets the men around him he wants.
Tonkov is putting a lot of work in today early on to try and get clear. There's Fernando Escartin in first place there, and again the recovery, but for the moment I can't see the yellow jersey of Armstrong. There he is. He comes up in about 15th or 20th place. This is the furthest back we've ever seen him riding in the mountains so far in the Tour this year, Phil.
He's got to tell himself this is not the time to panic. Just stay cool, lose your men around you, but keep your eye on the men that you need to watch. Alex Zula, Abraham Olano, Fernando Escartin, Laurent Dufaux. They are the men he must watch out for and shouldn't be drawn out to chase others down today, because it could well be that the maillot jaune of the Tour de France is going to have to do all the counting of the attacks himself.
Tonkov moving up into third place. Richard Virenque very nervous as well today, because he realizes today he could consolidate his lead in the King of the Mountains competition. He doesn't want any breakaways to get too far off the front, because he wants to try and get as many points as possible. But now Dufaux has been brought back, and that under the pressure from Pavel Tonkov. But again, Escartin looking very frisky. Right on his wheel is Lance Armstrong. Armstrong knows that he isn't going to go anywhere without Escartin.
Well, he's cooling down the moves by proving he has the strength on this round one of attacks, and there's going to be plenty of rounds today. The one man who hasn't really been taking part, Paul, is Abraham Olano.
Olano's not a great attacking rider on these climbs. He's not able to respond to these accelerations, but he is a strong rider, and he'll wait for all the other riders to throw their guns down first and throw down their ammunition before he comes to the front and tries to ride a man like Armstrong off his wheel.
Well, we're heading up towards the summit now of the Col de Monte, and boy, they know they've been on a climb today with plenty of more still to come. This is what is left of that original league group that attacked at the bottom of the climb here. Javier Ochoa and Jose Javier Gomez are the two Kelme boys in this group up front as they continue to make the climb here. That Alberto Eli, number 23, and Andrea Perron going through there as they continue the climb here up towards the group at the top. And the Gonzalez Galdiano is the Vitalicio rider who's gone through. Well, he's answered the attacks, Paul. There's a little bit of regroupment, and he's got one rider left around him. Looks like Livingstone.
It looks very much like Kevin Livingstone. Livingstone, fortunately for him, very much knows the final of today's stage, because he in fact finished second here on a stage of the Tour de l'Avenir, where he finished second overall. A great rider, Kevin Livingstone, and he will really have to pull himself inside 8 today to look after Armstrong, because let's not forget he's still recovering from a very bad crash that he had during the Alpine stages.
Now, this is more sensible now. The initial accelerations have cooled. The climbers have got through. The sprinters are now out of the back of the race. So this bunch made very much smaller on the climb of the Col de Monte. Armstrong and Livingstone are up near the front. It's a very small, compact group at this stage of the day, though. And Armstrong knows now on the next climb they'll no doubt launch another flurry of attacks as well. But he's just got to watch out for the whereabouts of Alex Zula, who continues to look very, very strong. In the press conference yesterday, Armstrong said of Zula, they were still very nervous about that man. And if he hadn't have lost 6 minutes in that unfortunate crash on the Passage du Gois on the second road race stage of this year's Tour de France, he would in fact have been within 90 seconds of that yellow jersey. And as Lance said in his own words, and then it would have been a different race.
He'd be a lot happier having 7.5 minutes in front of Alex Zula than being 7.5 minutes behind him. But Alex Zula has ridden a perfect Tour de France, apart from that one day on the third stage over the Passage au Gois, and he really tried to recover. He chased all the way to the finish line to try and keep himself in the bike race. And psychologically, he never laid down arms either, Phil. He's always been concentrated. He's always been looking for a gap, always been trying to get himself into a situation to ride high up in the overall standings. He's riding very well this year, and I think we'll see something special from him today.
And there he is, Lance Armstrong, looking down now. Must feel a very lonely man in that leader's yellow jersey. Everybody around him would love to wear it. He's just got to sit there and follow the moves. He doesn't need to attack at all. He's got the time gaps. I think he knows this is going to be the most difficult day of this year's Tour de France, and if he's in yellow by the similar time gaps tonight as he was this morning, he'll start to think of Paris in the nicest possible way.
Armstrong will be quite happy because he has two good, strong teammates in this group. If you can see number 184, that's Tyler Hamilton, and 186 is Kevin Livingstone. The two best men that he could have with him in the mountains, but surely he must be thinking back to that third stage of the Tour de France when he lost Jonathan Vaughters, because Vaughters, he said to me, was in the best form of his life, and he would have been a real ally on these mountain stages.
Which he was, of course, and I know that Jonathan will be watching these pictures and kicking himself. It wasn't his fault he fell out of the race. But he would have been alongside Lance, and it would have been three riders to jack him up as they climbed this first category mountain today, the Col de Monte.
Time for Armstrong to recuperate from those big attacks. The climbers went absolutely ballistic on the first slopes of that climb. They really wanted to blow this race apart, and immediately I thought we were going to have a group of 3 or 4 strong riders going off the front of this group, but it's all now come back together, and that's a lot to do with the fact that we're still a very long way to go to the finish line. But there are a lot of white jerseys at the front, those of Team Banesto. They're obviously going to try and do something today. They're going to try and move Alex Zuller up a little further, because he's only separated by 3 seconds from the second place of Abraham Olano.
And there's another attack going straight off the back now. And that looks as though it's a Française de Jeu rider or is a Mappé rider. If it's a Mappé rider going clear, it'll be Tonkov again, possibly.
It's very much like the style of Tonkov, trying to come off the front here, trying to pull himself into this bike race once again.
Well, it is indeed Pavel Tonkov, and no, it's not. No, it's not. As he comes up alongside us, it is Falazin, Gianni Falazin, the Italian on the Mappé team with the similar name to Falazine, who's a Belgian rider. Now he is launching an attack. There'll be no reaction initially from certainly Lance Armstrong. We'll see if anybody else goes after him. Let me remind you, still ahead by some 47 seconds on the climb here are now only 6 survivors of that breakaway, and I'll give you their names as we look at this still now as our camera's locked out here. But the net up front, John Adriozola of Banesto, Alvaro Gonzalez Galdiano of the Vitalica team, Javier Ochoa, Kelme, Jose Javier Gomez from Kelme, and Andrea Perron from the Once team, Alberto Eli from the Telecom team. And we're taking a look here at the beautiful sight around the finishing line. We've got problems with our pictures just for the moment.